Good afternoon, everyone. It is January 30th, 2017, about noon my time, so it's about 3 p.m. Eastern. I got roohif here. We were just talking a little bit about the fact that both of us have tried to reach out to AIG and NCR to try to get like some of the representatives to come in and talk on the Great Debate about some of their claims. And it could be anything, not just human chromosome 2. I mean, I haven't asked them about sending somebody to talk about polonium halos. Maybe like Prudhomme would come in, or Faulkner, Milton. I mean, they have dozens and dozens of representatives. And Dr. Tomkins said he actually would consider coming in and talking about some of his work. He said he was kind of free this month. He actually said that to me, and he actually said it to Ben Kissling too. And then when I contacted him, he said, "Well, I'm going to turn this over to my event coordinator." Not more than a couple hours later, the event coordinator messaged me or emailed me saying that he was too busy. When I did a follow-up, they just reiterated that they just didn't have the time. So it's not a big surprise. I kind of was expecting it, but I wanted people to note that we've had great guests come in, and a lot of old creationists or theistic evolutionists, such as Hugh Ross and Fuzz Rana, and even Mary Schweitzer took time out of her schedule to come on, and yet we are trying to find young Earth creationists to come in that are name recognizable, right? We want something name worthy. And it is difficult. It is almost impossible. And I'm wondering, should I read something into that? I mean, I'm trying to be objective here, Riff. I really am. And I want to say that, you know what, maybe they have their reasons, but I find it to be very odd that we have all these other people coming in. PZ Myers even dropped in out of the blue, right? After I messaged him. Arin Raw comes in, and yet not a single young Earth creationist. And somebody you've actually had engagements with. You've actually talked to Tomkins before, and actually he revoked one of his papers because of you. So he knows who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, he knows I'm not just some sort of random off the internet. I'm a little more cynical about why he's not going to come on, given my interactions with him in the past. I mean, I've been in contact with him for the last 3 years or so. And every time I point out a problem with his work, with the exception of his 70% human to chimp DNA figure. So barring that, every interaction that I've had, I've pointed out a problem. He tends to go silent for quite a long time. So
do you think that's just maybe a defense
that
mechanism
happens
then?
to stuff.
Because everybody said he's not a dumb person. Even Sam, testified that he was pretty good for what he did. That's why, I mean, he was very nice to me. He was a lot nicer than Kevin Anderson was. Dr. Kevin Anderson was just, well, he wasn't really getting off on me, but he was bad-mouthing you, which obviously I don't take kindly to. He didn't say anything negative.
I don't mind.
Yeah, but I do.
I would rather he respond to the work rather than,
Which he didn't, though. Well, I guess he mentioned a few things, but
no, I know, yeah.
But I remember you wrote back and you.
What were they? I haven't seen any substantive.
What's that?
I haven't seen any substantive response from him. It's just been like I've been trying to get other people to, from the YEC side, trying to get those people to defend his work, because they're the guys that are using his work and not really knowing how bad it is. So I'd love him to come on and talk about, human to chimp DNA comparisons. About his latest play, the similarity. He claims that the chimp genome is filled with contaminated human DNA, and that would therefore increase the apparent similarity. I've sent him and the editor of Answers Research Journal what the actual reason is why. Got to backtrack a little bit. He analyzed chimpanzee trace reads, which are like the raw sequencing data, and that raw sequencing data is kind of error prone both at the beginning of these short reads and at the end. So he's comparing these raw chimpanzee reads against the human genome, against the chimp genome, and saying, oh wow, they're much less similar to the human genome than the current is to the human genome, and therefore he concludes that there's human DNA contamination. The most obvious reason why that they are less similar is that they are less or of lower quality. So that the beginning of the each individual read and the end of each individual read are low quality. So when you actually go to assemble a genome, you trim off the low quality ends and then put them all together into the genome, and that's when you get say when you hear about a genome that has 6 times coverage, it means that each base pair has been sequenced 6 times. Software, or sorry, the assembly software basically takes, a best guess at what that base is. Say if 5 of the 6 reads at that particular base pair show it's an A, and the other one shows it's a T, then it's most likely an A. So if you work backwards from there, you can say that the trace reads themselves may not necessarily represent what ends up in the genome. So what I did was show that the differences between the 3 sets of data that we have, so the trace reads and the human genome, show that the trace reads belong to the chimpanzee genome. Basically showing that the number of low quality bases in the trace reads corresponds more to the chimp genome than it does to the human genome. It's probably easier to demonstrate with a diagram.
Didn't he use an older build? He didn't use a de novo build, right? He used like an old build for what he was trying to do.
Of the chimpanzee?
Yeah.
I think he used the 2011 chimpanzee genome, which is fine. No, I think there's version 2.14, which I think is 2011, and that's fine. Like I don't mind which version he uses, but the whole hypothesis of human DNA contamination is baseless, and I've demonstrated both to Tomkins and to the editor that the reason he gets the results that he does is because of just the inherent inaccuracy of the trace reads.
So you think if anybody else was analyze that data, they would see the same thing? They would look at it and go, "Hey, we're not seeing there's any human contamination here. It's actually just an error in the measurement."
It's not that his data is wrong. It's that he attributes it falsely, and I've shown what the correct attribution is.
Well, his conclusions are,
and it's
are
not
faulty.
that there's human. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So his numbers, I'm yet to verify the actual numbers exactly, but I mean, my interim work shows pretty clearly that these trace reads do belong to the chimpanzee genome and not the human genome.
What is his end goal, though? I mean, does he really think that by showing that there's some disparaging things between humans and chimps, like, I mean, what is the actual current one? Is 98.5% similarity?
It depends how you count it. I mean, if you're looking just at mutations, then it's about 98.8. If you're including indels, then there's room as to how you actually want to count those and how you count them.
But it drops down significantly if you count the indels.
Well,
because obviously you're going to treat the end. By the way, before we get too far there, I got to say the link to join us is going to be in the live feed. It's actually on my channel, or the G Plus. It's in the YouTube. And by the way, people don't know who you are. I guess they're asking who you are. I thought everybody kind of knew who you were.
I can't see the live chat.
So I didn't introduce you. Everybody, this is Roohif.
I'm bald from leukemia.
Yeah, he's going through chemo right now. That's why he has the deep sunken eyes. But nobody does shave his head.
Finished chemo.
Yeah. But
I finished chemo.
Yeah, he's finished. So he's on the last legs of it. So he's healthy enough to come talk to us like he has in the past. He's the one that actually got Tomkins to revoke one of his quote unquote papers where he had done a genomic analysis between chimpanzees and humans and came up with 70%. And then we tried doing it again. He came up with like 80, 85 because the I mean, can you explain what an indel is and why that if you count all an indel instead of just counting it as one specific event, you count each individual mutations, why that's going to end up with a higher degree of difference between the two
Well,
genomes?
if you count indels, if you say first of all, indel is short for insertion or deletion. So if you line up two pieces of DNA and say there's a little gap, if you line up the alphabet, say, and there's a gap where the M is relative between the two alphabets, then software is smart enough to recognize that gap and put a space into the one that's missing, so that the rest of the sequence lines up. So indels can be, one or two base pairs, or they can be, thousands to millions of base pairs.
Now he counted if he had an indel that had many different base pairs, was he counting each individual base pair as a separate discrepancy between the two genomes?
I actually was, because I think he was as well, and that's the reason I did that, was to be quite conservative in the number that I got at the end.
Which was what?
So there are still 96.9 plus or minus 0.2%.
Yeah, that's still significantly higher than his 80 to 85 that he got the second time around.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going with this alphabet analogy. So if there is, so you've got two alphabets, except for one, the first line of alphabet has the M missing, so roughly in the middle. The way he did his analysis was that he employed a parameter to the software called ungapped, and the ungapped parameter basically prevents the software from figuring out where indels are. So what he did was he had those two alphabets, and they were almost identical, except for the M that was missing in one of them. What he did by using this ungapped parameter, so the software would try and compare these two strings, and when he used this ungapped parameter, he would only get a match that was 13 letters long. So, A through to L, which is, I think, 12 anyway. So he would get a match 12 characters long. But what he would do was say 26 letters in the alphabet, which is, I don't know, 45% or something. So he would report those two strings as being 45% similar, where everyone else on the planet would say, oh, look, there's an indel in the middle. But apart from the indel, you've got 25 matches out of 26, which is, 96%. So his overall result of 88% includes those matches at 45% rather than 96%, and that's just absurd. So this has been pointed out to him at least 4 or 5 times. So he's well aware of why that's wrong, and there's even evidence. Actually, I won't go there today.
Well, I just received an email from him and
from Tomkins.
Yeah, I'm responding right now, and I'm CCing you on it as I usually do. So give me 1 second.
Wow, thank you.
He writes this. FYI, I have a peer-reviewed paper coming out in a month that is a response to the claims made by Glenn Williamson and others. I would suggest dropping this whole effort until that paper comes out. Yes, Ruf's name is Glenn Williamson, which I'm not doxing him. He's made that. He's actually said that before. Again, Glenn is not a geneticist or a biologist, and many of the claims he made were easily debunked. Okay, my response to him is twofold. One, I asked him if he means peer review as an actual peer review in a recognized scientific publication. And the other one is, even though, Glenn, you're not a geneticist or biologist, you are extremely well versed in these topics. And we do have people who are PhDs in biology, and we have somebody who is working on a PhD in bioinformatics that have looked at your stuff. I don't see any of them criticizing your work. And they've asked the same questions to Tomkins that you and everybody else has asked. So what your background is
I'm not
irrelevant,
alone.
right? Because he said the claims you made were easily debunked, yet he had acknowledged you were correct in the past.
Maybe he should debunk them to me rather than, I've asked I've asked many times, what he thinks of my responses. I don't know. He seems to rather than respond personally, I think maybe he, I don't know, puts it into a paper so that he gets paid to do his job. That sounds reasonable, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I think it is. Let me respond to him real quick.
So,
Let's get some other people in here real quick. Again, if you want the link, it's actually on the G Plus page, the Great Debate Community page, and my Facebook page. So just come on in. Let me get this going with him real quick. I just love this though. You know, Glenn is not a geneticist, and his claims are easily debunked. Yeah, okay.
it's quite easy to email me these debunked claims as well.
I love this.
He just goes silent.
I said I love this. I would suggest dropping this whole effort until this paper comes out.
Yeah, he's just saying he's not going to respond personally, which is fine. Yeah.
Let's see. What does he mean by that? I mean, what does he think this paper is in regards to?
I would guess human chromosome 2.
Should I ask him the questions like the if the DDX11 is highly expressed, right? He's not going to answer, is he?
Yeah, probably not, but I mean, may as well ask.
Okay. Man, I got quiet in here.
The live chat. Hold on.
Yeah, check the live chat. Read off some of the guys. Ask him questions in the live chat while I'm doing this.
Yeah, who's roohif? Never seen him before. Who am I? I don't know. I'm a guy that hassles Jeff Tomkins for a job. That's what I do. Yes, I've just finished chemo. Well, actually, I've had 3 rounds of chemo. I was diagnosed in mid-September with acute myeloid leukemia, and had a very rough induction phase as I was diagnosed. I spent a lot of time in ICU. It got very dicey a couple of times. After that, I had 2 relatively boring rounds of chemo in November and December. And then at the beginning of January, I went into hospital again for a stem cell transplant. My brother was a perfect match donor. So I received his stem cells on the 11th of January after receiving some fairly hardcore chemo to knock out my stem cells in my bone marrow. And my brother's stem cells engrafted on about day 11, which was the 22nd of January, and that's quite early. So I was very happy, very, very happy with that.
Hey, can you read what I just put?
The chemo is not fun.
Yeah, so he's kicking it. Yeah, he's still with us, and that's the good thing, right? I mean,
yeah,
I'd be bummed.
I look terrible though.
Well, yeah, that'll go away. I mean, it's better to look a little gaunt than dead, for God's sake. So I think you're doing amazing.
There are photos of me in hospital where I actually look dead. So I guess it's okay.
Probably felt pretty shitty too. I mean, my brother went through a couple rounds of chemo before he passed. He had colon cancer.
Yeah.
That metastasized and spread everywhere. But I mean, the chemo actually made him live another decade. He was supposed to die in his 40s, like early 40s, early even late 30s. He was supposed to die. He made it about 54, I think, when he died. So I mean, it extended his life quite a bit. Now if I correct me wrong, but the type of cancer you have is one of the more manageable.
I missed the last bit of that. Did you say my treatment is more manageable?
Your type of cancer is more manageable. It's not like a stage 4, lymphoma cancer,
correct.
Lung cancer, or pancreatic cancer or something.
My odds at the moment are quite good now, of 5 year survival, and I think I'm about a 75 to 80% chance of 5-year survival. I mean, there are a few things in my favor that may increase that as well. My case is more live or die rather than extending, if you know what I mean. Like if I get relapse in the next 6 months, that's very bad. If I get past the 2-year mark, as most people do in this situation, then I'm pretty good. Like I've had my entire blood system replaced, which is a mind-boggling thing to happen. The fact that we can actually do that is amazing, and we've been doing it for a long time. Apparently, I think the earliest bone marrow or bone marrow transplant is like 1939 or something. So
now with a bone marrow transplant, you're as the donor, it's not that bad, right? They just basically put it in intravenously, right? But the donor has to have it literally. They go in and scoop it out, right?
I had a stem cell transplant, so my brother was basically hooked up to kind of like a dialysis machine. So blood comes into the machine. They spin it out and try and get the stem cells out, and then inject the plasma and the red cells back into him.
Gotcha.
So he just sits there. He sits there for 6 hours having his blood.
So it wasn't very painful for him, just boring. Because I thought it used to be a very
pretty
painful
boring.
process.
I mean, he doesn't like needles.
Oh, who does?
Yeah, he hates needles, but he was willing to have a few needles to save my life. So that's pretty handy.
Well, I would expect so. Even I would get a few jabbed by needles to save your life, buddy. Just none in the butt, because that hurts. No. I actually have had one shot in the ass. It was a gamma globulin, I think it was called. It was a shot that everybody had to get in the military when we were going overseas. I think it was to prevent malaria, but don't quote me. And that hurts, by the way. It's not even in the butt. It's in the hip, you know? People think it's a butt shot. No, it's really in the hip, and it's very painful. Real quick, can you read what I wrote in the group chat? That's what I want to send him. Is that two good questions?
In the group chat. Where are we?
The inside group chat?
Highly expressed. Well, the second question, I know what the answer is. So it says how he came to the conclusion that DDX11L2 has an alternate transcript that crosses the fusion site with an active transcript. Excuse me. He can point to the RefSeq database where there is a transcript listed. As to whether it's actually expressed or not, you have to go to GTEx, and GTEx says no.
So you want me to clarify that? I just say, well, some databases have listed a transcript. There's no indication that transcript is expressed.
Yeah, I look at the chromosome 2 thing on two levels. So there's the DNA analysis level, which is quite simple, and then the second level is the DDX11L2 gene level. So I think the simpler questions and the easy wins are the questions that are most valuable, which I can put together a list of those questions later. But very, very, very simple stuff. I mean, he makes an explicit claim that you should not find a 6-character telomere repeat.
Oh yeah.
On the opposite side of the fusion to what it to its what do you call it? The strand, the direction of the strand.
The antisense.
Yeah. Oh, that'll do. So, if say TTAGGG is on the left-hand side of the fusion site, he will say that on the right-hand side of the fusion site, far off into the distance, you should not find any TTAGGGs, and on the conversely, on the right-hand side of the fusion site, you see a bunch of CCC TAAs, and he says you should not find any of them on the left, going back, 100 kilobases, which is just an absurd thing to say.
Yeah, they're called hexamer repeats, right?
Yeah, or just any hexamer, so any 6-character sequence. I think that the questions to ask are probably the easy win sort of questions. The ones where he's making the most egregious errors, because like I know what his responses will be to these questions.
You already know.
Well, yeah.
So should I not bother asking him then?
Well, like I said, I think it's easier to ask the easy win questions where he's clearly wrong. Like I know with the second question, he'll be able to talk about the transcript on the NCBI website, which is there.
What question should we ask him then?
The second question.
No. What question do you want to answer? I'll delete those two. What question do you want me to put in the email?
I would have to take some time to get them off my blog.
All right, let me do this then. Can you at least provide some evidence that I can give? Can you at least provide some evidence that I can give it to our PhDs if I can email them to you later?
Yeah, well, do an email later, I think.
I want him to try to realize that we're trying to get his side. We are trying to be
voice if he wants one. But he doesn't seem to want it.
Yeah.
He wants a one-way conversation. This will be what his response paper will be. It will be a one-way conversation, and then I'll have to go through and point out all the errors again, and we'll just go round and round and round. So, yeah, he does not want to take questions. He wants a one-way conversation.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Now you can read what I wrote. Yeah, I mean, it's just almost comical that I can see them doing this tap dancing avoidance thing, right? Because they know once they go on air that it is a permanent record, and they, as far as I know, none of them have ever gone on a show or a program or an on-air thing where they didn't have a young Earth creation moderator of some kind.
Yeah.
They'll go on like Ian Juby, right? They'll go on Trey. What that guy's name? Trey Parker. That one guy that did a really stupid video on evolution. I can't remember. Trey Smith. So they'll go on those types of things, and I know that Kevin Anderson is aware of the Great Debate community because he's friends with Paul Humber, and Paul Humber told us all about him and the way he was treated in the community. And at first he thought everything was fine. I mean, Humber was like, okay, yeah, that wasn't bad, blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, he felt that he was not getting his point across, and he eventually blocked me. And I was like, when you left, we're on good terms, we had a good discussion, and then you basically went nuts by just spamming creationist pages on Facebook with your nonsense, and we were responding to it, and that pissed you off. But then you took that and said, oh, well, I wasn't treated very well in the Great Debate community. We treated you just fine, Paul. He's listening if he ever listens. I mean, you watched that hangout, right, with Paul Humber? With no,
actually, I watched
with Rumpus. You didn't watch it?
No, I watched the one with Ben Kissling.
Yeah,
send me a link. I've yet to catch up on a lot of stuff.
Ben
is
a
many
troll.
hours of stuff to watch.
Ben is a troll. I mean, he just literally doesn't even want to have a discussion anymore. He just goes out of his way. He was antagonizing Fiona, basically saying Fiona didn't know how to read a paper properly, even though that the paper that they were discussing was something that was right up her alley. Like literally, she did research on, and he just was basically being arrogant. And I just can't understand why Ben does this. I mean, he's not that intelligent. He claims to have a degree in biochemistry. I don't think so, but hey, whatever. But when an established biological professor with a PhD is trying to explain something to you, you listen, right? If you want to question it afterwards, fine, but you listen first.
We're talking about Herman Mays, right?
Nathan says, wait one second. Nathan says chiropractor Paul. No, Paul wasn't the chiropractor. Chiropractor was what was his name? And Tony? He was a dick.
Chiropractor.
Yeah, we treated. I
saw that one.
Yeah, I treated him like shit. I admit that, but there's a lot of backstory on that. We were communicating for quite some time, and I made it very clear what we were looking for, and yeah, it didn't go very well. Troy Lawrence, that's was his name. He was a chiropractor.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't really know what he's talking about.
Not at all.
Whereas Ben Kissling was at least somewhat familiar with Tomkins' work, and even made the effort to call him and speak to him. So that was appreciated. The main point that Kissling Representative Tomkins was that Tomkins thought the chimpanzee genome is crap. From the work I've done in the last, well, intermittently over the last month or so, shows that the chimpanzee genome is fine, and it is, somewhere between 97 and 99% identical.
Yeah, like I said, though, I mean, what is he attempting to try to disprove there? I mean, is he trying to say, oh, well, he's the only person on the planet that's looked at this and said, oh, look, there's a bigger discrepancy between the genomes of humans and chimpanzees, and that no other scientist been able to replicate this or find out that, hey, you know what, maybe we're not very close to chimps. Maybe they're further down the evolutionary path than we are. I mean, what is he?
Herman Mays, I think I heard my name. Yes, you did. I saw you wave a minion sequencer around in one of Steve's hangouts, and I actually bought one. It hasn't arrived yet.
You were a bad influence on him, Herman. He saw your minion and he got minion jealous.
No, it's awesome.
He got minion envy.
So I'm actually building a lab at the moment to do some DNA sequencing with the minion. So I've got pipettes and microcentrifuge, and I've still got to buy a couple of things, like a thermal cycler and that sort of stuff. But I'm pretty excited to get my hands actually dirty, actually figuratively speaking. I don't want to get contamination in my sample. My first experiment will be trying to find the actual fusion site in pig chromosome number 6. There's a paper out years ago where it talks about the comparison between the domestic pig and what's called a babirusa, which is like a wild pig, for want of a better description. And they basically do some comparative karyotyping between the two, and show that pig chromosome number 6 is most likely the result of a fusion between two chromosomes that are still separate in the babirusa. The current pig genome is mainly made up of some BACs, so bacterial artificial chromosomes. So the current pig genome is very much incomplete, and there are a lot of gaps in there. And one of the gaps is there's basically a gap where the fusion site should be. So I'm hoping to get some long reads out of the minion to sort of build some scaffolds across those, so hopefully flesh out the pig genome a little better.
So basically, it's an expensive toy.
It's relatively expensive. Like I think it'll end up costing about probably $5,000 to get this to the lab set up, depending on how expensive I go in this equipment. But it's my new hobby at the moment, trying to get that sort of stuff ready. So I've contacted some vets around here, some piggery vets, to say, look, when I'm ready, can you guys collect a blood sample for me, and I'll go and collect it and extract and purify the DNA, and then run it through the minion and see how it goes.
Yeah, I guess that'd be kind of fun. Oh, we got a guest who's not.
I'm excited. Yeah,
Herman.
Yeah.
I also have another guy that might want to come in. He's a ID person who thinks that he thinks that the modern evolutionary synthesis needs a complete overhaul, and that somehow this whole extended synthesis crap, that it's just I don't understand why people are making a big deal about this extended synthesis stuff. It's like they keep on saying that, oh, epigenetics is going to revolutionize everything. Herman, how long have we known about things like DNA methylation and stuff like that? I mean, this is not something that's relatively new in the last couple of years, right?
No, it's no, definitely not the last couple of years. I mean, it's been
80s, 70s, 80s.
Pretty well known on or I don't know exactly, but decades sort of level.
But why do they think it's so revolutionary that, like Tommy Hall tries to advocate that these epigenetic modifications are more the prime mechanism, right? Things like DNA mutations, and yet when you tell him that these things usually go away after a generation or two, that doesn't seem to bother him or phase him. So I'm like, well, how does this implement in a population if they go away after a few generations? How is that the prime mechanism for evolutionary change?
I have no idea what they're thinking. I would love to sort of delve into this further and maybe write a paper about it or something, because it's kind of a mystery. I think they're just enamored with anything that is any kind of sensational headline that says everything we knew is wrong, they latch onto, and they sort of use it as an invitation to say that they can kind of pick and choose as to what they don't want to believe from science, because look, we found this new thing that we didn't know before. Way of them to justify their doubt in science in a way. But I don't think there's any rational, evidence-based reason for it. So
I think they have to like latch onto something, right? I mean, they'd have to make this to appear there's some kind of wedge in academia and science saying, you know what, evolution doesn't really explain everything, which I don't know any theory that does, but therefore let's throw in this God of the gaps type argument that if we can't explain something, then the only other explanation is intelligent design. That's what I see them trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's probably something along those lines is about right. They're also desperate for people who sort of belittle professional scientists and say we're liars or we're deluded or whatever. They really want to be professional scientists. So they have a lot of envy about when it comes to data and big words and things like that. So I think it's just more part of the effort to themselves as if they're serious scientists.
Well, see, I don't
so, like this thing of,
so go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll just say I just not going to call any of them scientists. To me, you cannot be a creationist scientist and actually be a scientist. I am sorry. I don't mind being mean on that. But the reason is because a true scientist goes by the data. They're data driven, right? And if you start off with a paradigm that the Earth is a specific age and cannot be any other age, you are not a scientist. You are not going where the data lies. You're basically letting your own ideological beliefs be your driving force. Now, a true scientist, even Mary Schweitzer, admitted that given enough evidence for a young Earth, she would believe it again, because she used to be a young Earth creationist, and I understand that. Given enough evidence, you change your position. Young Earth creationists cannot be wrong, and that to me is not a scientist. Period.
Well, and that's why Tomkins is not on this show today. Because they basically, they really have to control when you are in that place that they're in. You have to be in institutions that want to control the message, and for real scientists, somebody calls us up. It's like Mary or me, or we want to talk about our work all the time. It's impossible to shut us up. So
that's a fundamental difference, isn't it?
It's a fundamental difference, and they are sort of an agenda-driven, sort of a political, ideological, agenda-driven institutions where everybody has to be on the same page. You don't go and talk about your work outside of some controlled setting and things like that. That's the only way they can survive, really, is to have that kind of control over the message.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's exactly what I think is going on here. That is exactly why they don't want to go into this type of venue. The venues they do try to go into would be obviously like I said before, Ian Juby's channel and those kind of things, because they know that if things get out of hand, the moderator is going to shut things down. And, of course, Ian Juby is not going to ask them the tough questions that roohif would want to get answered from Tomkins or Jordina Prudhomme or a few other ones that I've reached out to. I've even messaged Jason Lyle. I mean, I've literally contacted just about every name recognized PhD and for a younger creationist that I can think of. And yeah, I've gotten responses, but not a single one is willing to go on air. Not one.
Yeah. And it's excuses all the time. It's like, like we started talking about the minion thing, I brought that up because Ben said, well, people asked Ben, well, why don't they do this research? Why don't they sequence this gene? Why don't they do that? So biased about them, they can't get the money to do it.
Oh, they've got plenty of cash.
They, not only do they have money, they have probably better access to money than what I have.
Oh, damn right.
Yeah.
Expensive to do.
Well, I mean, don't you think by now Ben has really gone full troll?
I'm setting up a lab for about $5,000, I think.
Right.
And that's to ICR. That's nothing.
Nothing. Ben actually on the Creationism board said he was going to a fundraiser for some. I don't know if it was ICR or something like that, and they wanted to raise $4 million.
Oh God, they can't afford a minion? Seriously?
No, they can't afford like he said, the $5,000 to start a basic minion lab, and it's just silly. They're not serious about it at all. I mean, that's why they don't come on here and talk. If they're not in a controlled environment, that's why they don't do the actual research. When the questions come up, they just want to spin their narrative. And
well, their arrogance is overwhelming. Did you listen to the response that Tomkins said to me in regards to roohif? Like I said, he's been okay to me, and Dr. Kevin Anderson was okay to me, but they were dissing on him, which roohif doesn't have a problem with. What I do, I don't like that. But he had wrote to me, and let's see, he said, FYI, I have a peer-reviewed paper coming out in about a month that is a response to claims made by Glenn Williamson and others. I would suggest dropping this whole effort until that paper comes out. Well, what do you mean drop? I like that. I was just dropping this whole effort of getting you to, make a response. You have to write a paper. And what does he mean by peer review paper? I don't think it's going to be a published peer review paper. I think he means it's going to be like, oh, hey, creationists, come read this and tell me if it's good. And if not, lie to me, telling me it is good, or just, say you liked it. That's their idea of peer review, because a fellow creationist is a peer, right? And he also says, Glenn is not a geneticist or biologist, and many of the claims he made were easily debunked. I've corresponded with Tomkins for several months now, and been CC'd on many different messages from him and Glenn. And do you know how many times I've seen him easily debunk roohif? 0.
Yeah.
0.
I would love a response.
What is he even talking about, roohif? When has he easily debunked you on anything?
No idea. He hasn't responded. I mean, I'm annoyed it's going to be another one-way conversation. Like, I want a... I'm happy to do it live, of course, but I mean, a one-on-one conversation about this stuff rather than this cycle of me contacting him personally, pointing out what I see the flaws in his research. And then like a year later, some paper comes out which supposedly rebuts my position, and then I have to go and debunk that. And it's just this drawn-out cycle, whereas these things could be resolved a lot quicker and a lot more easily if we just sort of have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean,
if you would just, if stuff that's really earth-shattering, like evidence that humans and chimps don't share a common ancestry, is huge.
That would be a big deal, right?
It's a big deal. Yeah. If you really had evidence for that, you wouldn't bury it on some web page. It would be in Nature or Science.
Yeah, I mean, think about that.
About it.
Would evolutionary theory as we know it be able to survive something to that catastrophic nature, to see that, chimps are so much further down the line in lines of phylogeny than, let's say, like an orangutan, like somewhere along the lines of, like, I don't know, a giraffe or something? We'll find out it's like, wait a minute, how does this happen?
If it was a real thing, it would be a huge, big deal. And if he had solid evidence, because that's the thing, they act like they have solid evidence for all this stuff. But if any scientist that had real evidence for something earth-shattering like that, Science or Nature immediately.
Well, that's the commonality with all of them. Every single time, they've all had this pompous attitude that they have evidence. And when I asked them for it, none is ever provided besides the same old rigmarole. At least when I say I have evidence for something, I can actually cite them something. Like, for example, with the Mary Schweitzer thing. We have evidence that what she found, what she didn't find, from her own lips, right? And so when Ben and other people are claiming that she was, threatened, that they, tried to, fire her, and she was worried about her job. I mean, that's just horse shit, right? So that's the kind of stuff that I'm just seeing with them. It's all show. no substance whatsoever.
Yeah, all the rest of that is what they make up to save face. You know, they make something obviously can't defend, and then are persecuted, or there's bias against us, or there's people's jobs are being threatened. It's all just to save face, so they don't have to defend what they just said.
Well, we should probably show some restraint here too, in terms of saying that, well, if our understanding of human chromosome 2 was a misunderstanding, we're wrong about this, that would be earth-shattering. It would be big news. It would get a particular subset of scientists very, very excited, but not excited because it means that the theory is in crisis, but excited because it means that there are more questions to be asked. There's no way that, I mean, I know that the creationists say this all the time, that, well, you know, human chromosome 2 isn't really a problem for us because we think these things were separately created anyway. Or even if it was a fusion, it doesn't hurt us because all that means is that the fusion happened at some point after the fall. Right? They can explain it away any way they want. It's only a problem for evolutionists because if human chromosome 2 doesn't work out the way that they, meaning the evolutionists, say it does, well, then that's it for common ancestry. And that's not true because our understanding of human chromosome 2 as a product of a fusion is only one piece in a very big puzzle. And there's a lot of evidence that indicates common ancestry amongst the great apes. I mean, just let's wind back the clock a little bit to before we understood the telomeric fusions. I mean, there was so much evidence piled up that humans are great apes, that we share common ancestry with all the other extant great apes. But there's this one big problem, and that is we don't have the same number of chromosomes as the apes. Like, how can that be? And that was the state of the science for the longest time. A lot of evidence says, all the evidence says, that we are great apes, but there's this one really big wrinkle in it. How the heck do we have one fewer pair of chromosomes? And this is going back to the days, you know, before we sequence these things. We're looking at like photographs of, you know, microscopy.
1982.
And before that, we knew that there were a different number of chromosomes, so that left the question, well, we have all this evidence that says common ancestry, but we have this one really big problem, and that just generated the question, well, how do we have one fewer chromosome? Well, it could be a fusion. Well, now the more that we look into it, we understand that it is a fusion, and further we've come to understand the mechanisms of fusion. So yeah, if one of these bits of information gets thrown out the window, that just raises excitement because it's questions that come up, not because the theory now falls apart, and now we think we're like separated from the giraffes or something.
Wow,
that's overstating it.
I think that's true. But I think my point was that if they had real evidence against the fusion thing, at the very least, that's a pretty solid Science or Nature submission. To say the least.
But can you imagine like a physicist that discovered a violation of some kind of entropic laws, or found that matter and energy can be destroyed, or some huge? It would be gargantuan. They would be well known. They would love to find something like that, right? I mean, that would be a physicist's
people actually
dream.
Find stuff like this all the time. They find stuff that is not what we expected. So, I think there was a recent genome paper for the ctenophores, the comb jellies, and it found that comb jellies were the sort of basal group to the animals. And that had some big ramifications because it meant that all the sort of movement things like neurons and the capacity to move evolved twice, evolved in the comb jellies, and then it evolved later in the selenorates. So that was against what we thought, but that's a Nature paper or science. I forget where it's published, but that's a big pub. And so that's what I'm saying is that if they really have big news to tell, they need to tell it somewhere where that's appropriate. So, but hey, I'm glad to be on here, you guys, but I got to run real
thanks,
quick.
buddy.
I hate to jump, but
anytime.
I'll see you guys later. Thanks a lot.
See you, Hammond.
But hey, Hogtie was talking about, the necessity of finding out a reason why we have a different number of chromosomes than all other members of Homoidia. So until we actually even looked at the staining and saw that what was going on before we even knew about the fusion, all the rest of the evidence still pointed to the same relationships, right, Hogtie? I mean, the chimpanzees, bonobos, and orangutans and gorillas all shared some kind of common ancestry, right? And even though we didn't have that piece of the puzzle, we knew the way the rest of the puzzle went together that what piece needed to be there. And eventually, as we looked into it, we find evidence that of chromosomal fusion. And then when they were to sequence it, validate and confirm that's exactly what happened. But isn't that how science is supposed to work like that?
Yeah, well, this is not really had not even been a contentious thing until the mid 19th, I should say the early, sorry, 20th century, 1900s. The early 20th century was when, for religious reasons, people just said, don't worry about what those scientists are saying. And then by the 40s and the 50s, you started getting more kind of scientific objections. And by scientific, I should put in quotation marks because it's from that side, but and they're not because it's from that side, but because of their the classification of humans as great apes comes. I mean, it goes way back. I'm straining to even put a year on it because it goes back to dissection studies. It's really, really hard to if you do comparative anatomy. It would be inconceivable for a skilled anatomist to take apart a chimpanzee and a bonobo and a gorilla and a human, as they do as part of their training, and also take apart giraffes and snakes and all these other creatures, and to somehow not be are aligned with great apes. So someone in the audience maybe can help me out. I mean, what year would this have been when comparative anatomy started up, and it was a lot of it was based just on dissection studies? That is, more simply, I should just say, when you look at the things, it's pretty obvious that we have those common features with the great apes that would make our classifications outside of great ape simply impossible.
Wouldn't that go back to like the 1700s?
The only thing I can think of is Carlos Linnaeus when he was doing
but that was the 1700s. He lived in. Carl Linnaeus was old. I mean, that goes
Yeah,
back.
no, literally, that's what.
Yeah, like 1700 something.
That's literally what I'm talking about. Yeah, and again, so I'm sort of, again, I would sort of wish I'd reviewed a bit of history before popping in with this. The reason I wanted to pop in actually was I want to meet this Herman fellow. I feel like I should know who he is. He said some great stuff there. But yeah, so you got to keep, so the era I'm talking about, dissection studies had gone on with animals and comparative anatomy for a long time, but there was sort of a forbidden era, and I'm thinking sort of mid to post-Renaissance era, where the idea of dissecting humans for the purpose of education it was abhorrent. It was taboo. But there were people who were doing it, and there was sort of this weird way that they journaled their stuff and underground communication of it. And it's kind of weird for people who grew up in the 20th century, now we're in the 21st century, to look back on that time and realize what it would have been like for the progress of science in the field of comparative anatomy, and more importantly, in the fields of medicine and surgery, that they didn't used to do this, right? I mean, everybody who's been through medical school has done at least one human cadaver dissection, some people 2 or 3. And we understand this. I mean, it's not a comfortable reality for most people. There is a course called Gross Anatomy. It's mandatory for everybody going through. I think some of the PT students have to do it too, but it's mandatory person, and you take that person apart, and it's uncomfortable, but it's no longer taboo. I think socially we've come to accept that's what happens. But I'm talking about that era, literally, if it isn't 16th century, 17th century, when this stuff was coming off, towards the end of that, when it got to be acceptable that some people were allowed to do these human dissections. By that point, it was well established and not controversial that we are great apes.
Yeah, but that was more like somebody. Was that heavy?
Okay, heavy.
Go ahead, heavy. What?
I was talking about comparative anatomy, and there's a thing in the side I put. It was a French naturalist born in 1517, Pierre Bellon. He did some anatomical investigation. So I'm pretty sure that's cutting things up and looking at them. Yeah. There was Andreas Vesalius, who was doing the same thing, systematically investigating and correcting the anatomical knowledge of some Greek physician named Galen. But apparently it's been going on for a long time.
500 years.
Oh, link. Let me just give you the link in case I want to look at it later. Might find something better than what I found.
Yeah, and that's great information, Heavy Hauler, because just to let you know that's also, there is a first year, most MD programs that have this in the first year, where you discuss the history going from the ancient Greeks and then through this era, the Dark days of people secretly taking apart these cadavers. But it's like any other field that when you take it, you have to learn, the history of your profession, and then you probably forget the stuff years later. But I think it's important that there's that context there, that like these names you're mentioning, these are things that people should have learned about in the early days of the program, but as I say, promptly forgotten about them.
Yeah, here we go. I read further. Edward Tyson is regarded as the founder of comparative anatomy. I was looking for a year here. It doesn't have a year there. So 18th, 19th century, he was somewhere in there. Hate that.
Well, I was hoping, Herman Fellowship, and I had just tuned in maybe 10 minutes before I popped in. And like Steve, you raised the issue about, we're sort of very careful about this, right? We don't want to say, well, creationist scientists aren't real scientists. We think it, but we don't want to say it out loud.
I will.
Bless you, Steve, for
I'm sorry,
just saying it out loud.
will.
Creation scientists are not real scientists.
Yeah. Well, I've taken that position too, and when you said that, and then you're like, well, I can't remember, you said something like, well, how do you take it seriously? And Herman provided an answer to the question as I was reaching for my button to join it, and he said exactly what I would have said, that you eject yourself out of the field of scientific inquiry as soon as you sign that says, "Best be damned, my particular subset of theology of the interpretation of the Bible, best be damned a statement, and your science. Go off and write for somewhere, but you are not to
That's
be
right.
taken seriously
And
anymore."
that is still your position, correct?
Oh yeah. Well, that I don't see them. They should never call themselves scientists. I don't see them as scientists. When people say, "Well, I'm citing this scientist, Dr. Tomkins." Okay, well, sorry, Jeffrey Tomkins. Let me say a little something about him again. I view Jeffrey Tomkins as a retired scientist, right? So I'd sort of, and that's a, remember, I got to chew those words before I say them, because I call myself a retired scientist. That is, I actually had funding. I was an investigator and went through the peer-reviewed papers. I was a peer that reviewed other people's papers. So I took part in that whole process, and there's a publication track record. But I no longer do it. So even in any of these hangouts, if anybody ever refers to me as a scientist, I immediately say, no. At most, you can call me a retired scientist, because I'm no longer involved in that. If I were to testify in court about some area of expertise, if the court were to say, well, where are you faculty? What do you do I could not say, well, I'm a scientist with whatever institution. All of those things I say of myself, I would quite fairly have to say about Jeffrey Tomkins, because he is a published academic. He's somebody, he went through the program, he did his dissertation, they shook his hand at the end of that oral exam and said, "Congratulations, Dr. Tomkins." And
He did get his PhD from a creationist, though. His PhD
I'm sorry,
mentor.
is that true?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, but did he not get his PhD from an accredited institution?
No, his PhD is accredited.
Yes, but his mentor was a creationist.
Oh, okay. Well, I accept that as sort of an asterisk footnote, but
Yeah.
I won't let that.
You mean his
nudge me
academic
back from my
advisor or
point.
something? Is that what you're talking about?
The person that gave him his PhD was a creationist at Clemson.
So you think they might have gone easy on him?
Yeah. Say again, Steve.
You think they might have gone easy on him?
He said, "You think they might have gone easy on him?"
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's best said by Hogtie. Actually, he puts a little asterisk on his PhD.
Yeah. No, the PhD. Well, okay. Well, what did he learn when he was in school? When you go for they have a little meeting while you sit in a stiff chair somewhere, and then they bring you back in and shake your hand and say, "Well, congratulations, so and so." Or alternatively, there's another speech they give, which is very unpleasant. And I'm saying he received that blessing from an accredited institution. He went forward, participated in. He was named as an investigator on projects that received funding, and he is named as an author on peer-reviewed publications. And I think quite legitimately ought to be referred as a scientist for that phase of his life. As soon as he left that enterprise and went over to the ICR and signed a statement that says facts be damned, I can at best refer to him as a retired scientist, right? So I think his legitimate publications can still be respected for what they were in terms of its contribution to canon, but everything he's written after that, this thing that he now calls, oh, well, I'm getting this paper peer reviewed.
Yeah, bullshit.
Peer doesn't mean friend. Peer doesn't mean one of your compatriots or colleagues. It means somebody who's an expert. Maybe not the right word for it. Maybe we should start calling it expert review.
Yeah, I have experience with peer review of creationist papers. I submitted one about 2 years ago, and the peer review process is atrocious.
Well, that's why I asked him what he meant by peer
you.
review. Because he said I'm doing a peer review paper next month.
Of course.
But when I see Tomkins write me something like he's doing a peer review paper next month, I instantly know that's not what everybody recognizes as peer review, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I actually think it's fair that I peer review his paper, given that the paper I submitted was obviously critical of his work, yet he was the primary reviewer. So I think it would be fair if I get to peer review his work coming out in the next month.
well, according to him, you have
obviously that's not
you're not an expert on anything. But it's funny, Hogtie. I kind of agree and disagree with you at the same time. What you said about him being a scientist, I'll go so far to say as this: I think they're scientists in name only. Would that be acceptable? Because I stand by my thing that you cannot be an actual scientist and not be objective. That's not how science works. It's a paradigm of science to be objective. And if you have this belief that supersedes all other, including all empirical data, you just cannot be a scientist at that point. I'm sorry. I don't see how it's possible.
No, sir. Sorry, maybe in my verbosity I was unclear, because I am not, and I want to underscore, I'm not saying that Jeffrey Tomkins is a scientist.
Oh, okay.
What I was doing was saying none of these guys are scientists, not one of them.
Oh,
and
maybe
then I sort of have to pause to say, well, actually, I got to be a little careful with Jeffrey Tomkins, because I do respect that he had been a scientist. If he would have had to testify at a congressional hearing or at a court hearing or something to bring forward his expertise at a time that he was actually a scientist, he would have been able to go to the registrar of his school and say, please give me that certificate. That before you go testify, they give you a little certificate that certifies, as a matter of fact, that you're an expert in a particular field and that you are faculty and a scientist in this regard. And you present that to the clerk when you approach, and he would have been able to do that. He was, I guess,
yeah. I mean, he's not
by what standard do we call someone a scientist, right? But okay, I'm doing it this way. Steve, are you a police officer?
No.
Right. If you were, or are you a member of the military? Are you a member of any military force, Steve?
No.
Okay, there was a period in your life where if I asked you that question, you would say yes, and if I said prove it, there would be some document or certificate by which you could say, yes, I'm respected by this group. Sure. But there's a comparable instrument that actual faculty and practicing scientists have available to them, which is what I'm saying I don't have at this point. I'm like, in the same way that you deem yourself retired or dishonorably discharged or whatever the case may be. For you.
Oh my God, neither. I wasn't retired or dishonorable. I got a full honorable discharge.
Okay.
I never even got in trouble. I went to XOI, which is pretty much nothing, and that got dismissed. So yeah, I've never even got punished or anything. I was good.
Okay. How many days after this hangout will there be a hangout on Ronnie's channel where Ronnie and Sean are talking? Did you hear that Steve McRae got dishonorably discharged?
Yeah, that's it, right? No, I've got my certificate.
Now, why did I say that?
You know what? And you can't have VA if you're dishonorably discharged. I have my VA card.
Oh.
Yeah, you can't get VA.
Oh, there you go. But yeah, I think my point's clear that I'm saying that none of them are scientists. A couple of them used to be scientists, but they have retired. They've left the enterprise. Yeah.
Well, I mean, these are real academic people, right? I mean, they have actual real PhDs. Unlike somebody like Hovind, who does not. You can't even conceptually consider Hovind a scientist.
No, not at all. No. Hey, Steve, I have to run. Thanks for the hangout.
Dude, you can barely walk, man. No, I'm just kidding. Shit.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad you dropped by, man. I'm glad you're
supposed to be.
What's that?
Forgive me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought there was supposed to be a young Earth creationist in here today.
No, we're making fun of the sick guy.
Yeah,
that's what we're doing.
Yeah. All right, I gotta go. I'll see you guys later.
I'm glad you're feeling better.
It was good to see. Good to see you again, or at least listen to you. Because yikes.
Good man.
Yeah, I look a bit scary at the moment. Anyway,
it's good.
Catch
it's
you
good.
later.
You're back on the uphill. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll chat with you soon.
All right. See you, Octo.
I didn't invite a young Earth creationist. I invited an idea, but he never popped in.
Can I? Well, I think this presents a chapter change with roohif leaving. I had intended to and then didn't get around to it, but I should do this anyway. I want to message roohif and say, you know those little photo arrays that people do where they do like a photo a day thing? He should start doing that now.
Like kind of little, just to see like the before and after. He sort of started that from before, but yeah, that's still.
He should have done it. Yeah.
Yeah, because he loses about a kilogram a day, and he just like dropped down like 11 kilos in a matter. I think like what he said, a couple of weeks. So I mean, he is losing a lot of weight, but eventually now it's going to start putting back on. So I think that'd be a good idea to see before and after.
Yeah, it is interesting. And one of the things is I know the reason why I mention this, and I apologize, Steve, this is not at all the topic you're hanging out, but I'm going to take a little liberty here if you don't mind.
You can talk about anything you want.
People are so horrified by cancer. They're so frightened by these diagnoses, and it is a frightening and alarming thing. But it's not something that you need to really panic about. I mean, there are ways of dealing with it. And the experience of cancer therapy is miserable. And it provides fuel for people like Tommy Hall, who point out how, well, our solution to cancers is to put more poisons and toxins in the body. This is a very carefully thought out and metered thing. And I wish I had a rough tally of the people I've encountered in my life who are going through what roohif is going, where it gets worse and worse and worse, and every day is worse and every day is worse. And then there's a bottom to it. And then after that, every day's better. And you talk to these guys a year later, and they're just like, man, like I remember being all kind of mentally clouded and my body was battling against me. But now, like, I'm back and I get to be with my wife and my kids. And so I would kind of like to see him do this photo a day thing. And you have to keep in mind, I have benefit of the photo array going the other way, right? Because as I think now roohif is more talking about this more publicly, I'll disclose. He was sending me photos from the hospital. So I know what he looked like in November, and I can see the photos as the weight's dropping and the skin color's changing and the mood is changing. And
Did you
then
see how many things
Christmas
he was hooked up to? The guy looked like a Borg.
Yeah, no, it's an unpleasant process, and even when he like post a picture of the labels of the particular drugs he was on, I think people who had seen my replies to that I was sort of winced, like, wow, they're giving you that much of that, like.
But his regimen was like Fast and Furious, right? It was like massive amounts, like an all once kind of procedure rather than like sustained long term. Is that right?
Well, I actually had to look up the treatment regimen that he was talking about because it does not follow any protocol that I'm familiar with. The particular drugs he was using are certainly routinely used in chemotherapy, anti-cancer chemotherapy, but the particular regimen of just how fast and how furious was something I wasn't familiar with, and I had to go look up and because it was actually alarming to me when he was saying, well, this is how much he's getting, and right, like, are they really that different in Australia? And no, these are modern treatment regimens for his particular brand of leukemia. And on it goes. And like I say, I really respect the fact that he's like, well, I'll go into a hangout and I'll turn my camera on, which is funny because he's got that ugly guy thumbnail that he uses as an avatar, right? And then now he comes in and he actually looks worse than his ugly guy avatar, right? And I don't mean to be unkind when I say that, but
because what's funny is a lot of us thought that was actually him for the longest time, right?
I did.
It kind of looks like his voice, yeah. So you got to find out.
Yeah, okay, well,
you know the story behind
it. Let's talk about that for a second.
Do you know the story how he got that photo?
Well, I thought he just picked it. He just did an actual Google search for ugly guy.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly
he did it. And if you do that,
can you imagine?
Yeah.
You just using
Well, it's funny because as I started to befriend him, through text conversation and stuff, I remember thinking, like, what a nice guy, what a really, really sweet, thoughtful, super intelligent guy. God, too bad about the face, because I really thought that was him. A guy who's that nice and that smart and good sense of humor.
Successful, has a hot wife, awesome house.
Yeah.
Good-looking guy.
Yeah, I know. I remember thinking, like, a guy who's that smart and that kind, and a good sense of humor, that guy should get laid once in a while. This is unfair that he looks like that.
Seriously, man.
And then I saw him at a hangout one day, and he's got his camera turned on, and he's got that sort of, rugged features, the unshaven Australian tough guy thing. Oh, of course, that's what he looks like. What was I thinking?
He looks like a man. I mean, like a rugged man.
Yeah, he's a rugged tough guy. Yeah, and then to get the photos of, like, his health going downhill, you sort of see, like, oh, that's pretty shitty. But I respect that he says, okay, well, you know what? This is reality. This is life, and I wish more people would see because people like to sweep stuff like this under the carpet, like women who won't talk about having had a mastectomy and about how awful it is when you go through that, and yet life does turn around afterwards. Right? We need these messages of honesty where people say, this was really shitty. I got cancer and I was pretty sick, and then I got treatment and I was even sicker. But you know what? It turns around.
Yeah, well, I was telling him that my brother was only expected to live to his late 30s, and he made it into his early 50s because of chemo. I mean, it sucked for him. He didn't like it, obviously, but I mean, it definitely prolonged his life. It's just he had such advanced stages and things metastasized from the lymphatic system to the lymphatic system from the colon, and he just passed away. But if it wasn't for that regimen, yeah, he would have died probably a good 15 years earlier because he had 6 inches of colon removed, and he was well aware that he had this for a very long time. And I'm thinking that people like Tommy Hall and Grim V, if they ever, God forbid, got cancer, and again, I would not wish that about anybody. I think the first thing they would do would take whatever doctor's advice gave them, whatever, telling them what they needed to survive. I don't think a single one of them would turn down modern treatment for their cancer. Either one. I think I'm almost positive.
Well, they don't, but the information they share encourages other people to do so. And I was trying to think of the last story I read of somebody who died because they were taking apricot seeds or whatever. And it doesn't matter if I can. It was a couple of weeks ago, but it doesn't matter because just go do a search. There's another one today, I bet you.
It reminds me when anti-vaxxers inject themselves with botulinum toxin, like Botox.
What? Why?
It's a bit of a hypocrisy. They say vaccines are toxins, but they inject themselves with the most toxic chemical known.
Well, because they like to have like homegrown facelifts. They do home injections of botulism, so they don't have to go to an actual practitioner. Is that what you're trying to say? Because they do have that. They have Botox parties in California where basically
do they inject themselves with the toxin or the bacteria?
Well, no, the toxin, and then they also have what's called pumping, where they'll take silicone and inject it into various body parts to plump them up. And in some cases, they've actually used industrial silicone, not understanding the different types of silicone, which actually resulted in death in a few cases. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Getting a medical procedure like that in someone's house, probably not the smartest move.
Well, the clinical Botox, the cosmetic Botox injections, my understanding is that that's a regulated field, and that's actually done by physicians. I want to be clear. Nothing I say here is an endorsement of this. I don't think it's a good idea, but it's. I'm saying that it's not as.
No, they do have they do have people that are actually certified to do it, but not always. They have other people that think that they are somehow qualified to do these things. I mean, it's a big thing in California in the more affluent parts that they just like ejecting themselves with shit. Why, I don't know.
Well, I know in my jurisdiction that definitely falls within the practice of medicine, and for somebody to inject somebody else with Botox, and it should be clear, well, it would be illegal.
That'd be assault in California.
No. But the other thing too is to remember that when they do it, and again, this is not an endorsement of it. I'm just saying they don't just randomly, here's some Botox to put in your bloodstream. It's very selective. It's a small dose that goes into a particular muscle tissue, depending on what the person is trying to correct. So it's actually a very low dose, and it's targeted to a particular muscle tissue. I'm sort of unclear what Nestle is saying about what were you saying about these anti-vax crowds inject, where do they inject this Botox? What's it for? Who's doing this? Why?
I think it's just to use it for facelift, I think, or not.
Oh, you are talking about the same thing. You're saying some of the. Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. It's hypocrisy because they say that vaccines are toxic and yet they are injecting themselves with a toxic chemical. The most toxic chemical.
He's talking about the hypocrisy.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood. And now it makes sense to me. But there are two very different groups of anti-vaxxers. There's the religious nutter, let's call them the Tommy Hall brand of anti-vaxxers, who just they're against science, against this whole enterprise, and they won't do anything like that. And then you've got let's call them the Jenny McCarthy anti-vaxxers, who are the uppity, affluent, need to look a certain way kind of people, and they're not necessarily religious nutters. And I take your point. Those people are incredibly hypocritical by saying, yeah, you can't put those toxins in your body, but hey, where are the toxins to give me so I can look a little bit better?
Yeah, vanity, vanity, always vanity, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's partly why I really like roohif's decision to say, well, I'm going to go in and turn on my camera, because he knows he's cared for and respected for many other reasons than his burly, rugged appearance. And I really like that he's presenting himself and speaking to the truth of his circumstances. That's really cool.
Oh yeah, he's met it face on. I mean, you couldn't ask for a bigger trooper for somebody in his situation. He's met it head on. He's fought it. I'm proud of him. I mean, I really like him a lot. Roof is like one of the nicest guys I think I've ever ran across in this community. I enjoy talking to him. We've talked many hours offline, off air. I think he's just one of the most fascinating people because, he doesn't have really any formal education in genetics and biology, but has such an aptitude for it. I mean, his background was computer science. If people don't know, his background is actually computers, and he did very well in that, to say the least. But he just seemed to, be bored, and he was like, "Oh, you know what? I think I'll study genetics," and he just he just picked it up really good, So.
Yeah. Well, here's one thing that's important about it. I don't think he's ever presented that he's an expert in genetics. I think he's always done as any scientist would do, and that's to say, here's the empirical question we're trying to address. Here's the background, why this is an important question, and then here's the methods I applied, and then here are my results. Now let's discuss that. We're not here to discuss my resume. And I mean, one thing I find weird about it is that, especially in recent months, this has really been a discussion about, well, this guy's not an expert, and well, look at how they criticize Tomkins when he's an actual PhD geneticist. Well, he was, but and then they'll turn around. I'm thinking in particular of like Ronnie and Antonio, who on several occasions have made an issue out of the fact that Arin Raw isn't a PhD biologist in any sense. And then they say, well, he didn't even go to college. And they tell these stories like, well, he's getting his information from his wife, who he thinks is an expert because she's a substitute teacher. Like, and I mean, just let's not even attempt to approach the actual topics that are being raised.
Sure, it's all about character assassination.
Right, and of course with misinformation, right? Because you can say of roohif, no, he's not a PhD geneticist. No, he's not a scientist. That's fair. But what you can't say about him is, well, he came out and lied about being a scientist, because he's never done that. He's never lied about having a PhD in any field, let alone in genetics or any field of biology. The same is true of Arin. He's never presented himself as something he's not. But in the meantime, you've got someone in their community who says he's a nuclear physicist, and the other people around him will retell that he's a nuclear physicist. They've said he's got a PhD. They said he's working on a PhD, whatever. They got these different stories about his education. At the same time, they tell this story about Arin, about how he gets this information from his wife, who's a substitute teacher, when in fact she is credited for helping script some of his new series of videos, because the two of them own this business together where that's their product. But the truth is, Arin had been doing these videos. Like the entire Foundational Falsehoods series was written before they were married, and while she was a young Earth creationist who was trying to convince him of the truth of young Earth creationism.
Awkward.
He didn't find her and say, oh, well, can you prop me up? Can you be the voice behind the curtain that tells me what to say so I don't sound stupid? Right? He's been doing this for a long time. He is university educated. His reasons for not completing the graduate program are out there, and it's a sad story, I'll tell you. And it just frustrates me when I hear people say, well, he didn't even go to college.
I wonder how many hours
he's
she
criticizing
drove him nuts when they were, like first met when she was a younger creationist. I mean, how he probably just was about to lose his mind. I mean, because Arin's great, don't get me wrong, but he's kind of short.
Intense.
Yeah, he's a little short tempered and intense. So he'd probably be thinking, God, this chick, yeah, she's cute, but damn, she's stupid because she's a younger creationist. But eventually, I guess, he convinced her that what she had believed was wrong, because she's an atheist now. Yeah. So
yeah, I think what happened with him and his wife, she challenged him or something, or he had this challenge, something about I can't convince somebody with the evidence, that evolution, whatever, is real. It's factual.
Yeah,
and she took him up on that.
Yeah.
And he convinced her, and then now they're
Kind of like
married.
happened with me and Wayne, you know.
well, except for the getting married part.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, but you know,
and-
Wayne's not my type. In many
He's not one to
ways,
commit.
Yeah.
But he was doing
Yeah,
that
Wayne's afraid to commit.
before he met
Yeah,
her.
the fact he's a dude.
Yeah.
All this knowledge and stuff that he compiled to convince her.
Yeah, Heavy Hauler's exactly right, and Steve, you got it exactly backwards. Having heard the story from both of them, I can tell you, and I think I'm not. This story's reasonably public, I'll say. I mean, they don't talk about their private life much, but I know he said this in videos, and he said this in a live hangout where she was also one of the participants. So this is not really a big secret, but they were not engaging romantically at all. They didn't meet on a dating site or meet at a bar somewhere or be picking fruit in the grocery aisle. That's not at all how they met. They met, as Heavy Hauler said. He was a fairly well-known person who'd put this challenge out there, and she thought that it would be good to sort of engage him on this topic and help him come to understand the truth of it. And they started to engage back and forth on that. I don't think it was a frictious or painful or argumentative type of relationship. It was very focused on the topic. In fact, their written correspondence is still available on the internet if anyone wants to see it. It was only after that when she started to be open-minded and do the searches. Because remember, Arin's challenge is, look, I can teach you this stuff if you're willing to do the steps I'm talking about. And then he makes the claim, well, pretty much nobody ever follows me up on this, right? Like he's offered it to G-Man and to Ronnie and these other people, and they just don't do it. The one exception is his current wife, because so she did start doing this stuff and did come to learn it and did get really interested in it. And their initial relationship was based on that communication. And the thing that he found attractive about her was her genuine intellectual engagement with the material. So they didn't meet in the grocery store picking out fruit and then they were sort of sexually attracted to each other. It was initially this correspondence where she impressed him, that sort of the personal relationship started after that. So it's I don't think it's a usual way that people would fall in love and get married. But yeah, that's the true pattern of it. So now she is supportive, but no, she is not the voice behind the curtain that makes him sound smart.
Yeah, I mean, he's talks about things on the fly. I mean, obviously he has a working knowledge of these topics, and I think what happens is that the Clowncore posse is just jealous that people like Arin Raw and people like Matt Dillahunty and people like all those really more well-known people that are actually invited to go debate and actually discuss things. When you got on their side people like Ronnie and Nephilim that nobody wants to talk to, and I think
Boy, you got that right.
I think it bothers them. I think it really does.
That.
Yeah, I mean, think
forgot
about
about that, Steve. You're exactly right, because the issue of jealousy and the issue of wanting Arin Raw's fame, for example, is very evident to me.
Oh, absolutely.
It's very obvious.
Well, envious. They're envious, not jealous, but they're envious. It's palatable. You can taste it when you hear them talking. The contempt they have for these people. Why they're not like that? Why Nephilim free? Why won't Arin Raw have a debate with me? Why won't Hugh Ross have a debate with me? Because he's not worth debating. People want to have.
Not to mention, a debate is not the right format. Arin Raw has said many times, I will not debate because you motherfuckers will gish gallop and talk about a whole bunch of shit. And so I'm not doing that. Let's sit down and have a proper discussion.
That's what I agree too.
And that's what we need.
I've always said the same thing. I don't like debating, but having a discussion. But he wants to, he wants to go for the people that are nominated as the prominent people in the community, right? For example, if you're going to put somebody up as an expert in evolution, that's young creationist, he wants to talk to that person. He doesn't want to talk to somebody who like Nephilim free, who nobody's going to recommend him as being the go-to person to get information about science. Nobody in this community would ever say Nephilim free is a person that we would prop up as the scientific go-to guy, right? I mean, I don't even think G-Man would even say Nephilim free would be the go-to science guy. So. Oh my God, your gain is so loud, Blue. You're crushing my ears, man.
I'm sorry.
But it's true. I mean,
no, I had the very much the same thing happened with Jason Burns back in the day. He wanted to debate Thunderfoot. He wanted to debate Arin Raw. He wanted to debate all the big leaguers first. And like, well, there's Blue and there's Glutes and there's Hog Tie Champ. Well, you're a big leaguer, but there's Why don't you start
baby
lower down
steps,
the
right?
ladder?
Baby steps, right? Yeah, exactly.
Baby steps. No. Arin Raw and Thunderfoot are denying my free speech. Just come on.
It's kind of like, my channel. I mean, I didn't start getting some of the bigger names right off the bat, right? I mean, it's lesser people, and then, kind of building it from there, and I'm trying to get even bigger names now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You waited. I mean, I don't know how you did it, but I'm sure your first day you didn't send messages out to all the big leaguers and say, come here.
No, not at all. How I got Mary Schweitzer still amazes me, and how gracious she was, and our correspondence goes back several weeks, and she was just really sweet, and, I'm very grateful, but I just have a way of asking them and talking to them about this stuff that most of them respond. I mean, again, that's how we got... well, actually, it was mostly Wayne's work, but Hugh Ross and Fuzz Rana. But yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of effort and preparation to have these kind of events. I've sent out other ones, which I'm still waiting on. I think we are going to possibly have Ken Miller in the near future, which would be awesome. But no young Earth creationist, I guess. So that's still the problem.
Well, that Mary Schweitzer thing was great. I just listened to it again the other day. And
did you like it? Did you like it as a whole?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And actually, I'll tell you what. One thing I really liked, and it was a moment she was speaking a little quickly, and I missed something she said. But thank goodness somebody, I'm embarrassed to forget who it was now, but somebody had taken a 38-second clip from that conversation and posted it. Yeah. Bill Ludlow. That's right. What a great little clip. And I remember, like, I was in the room for that. I think I'd asked the question right before she'd answered that one. And I was listening. She made a good point about, and it was along the lines of like, well, they're wasting their time trying to convince people the earth is young. Like preach the gospel message is one thing, but if you want to make the world a better place, feed the hungry, and she lists these things you ought to do. And the fourth one on the list, I didn't quite hear it when she said it.
I can read a quote. I have it.
Oh yeah, read the whole quote. Yeah. I don't want to.
This is a quote. We I actually copied it over, and this was in response to Paula Gia's question, and she basically said, if these guys would take half the energy that they spend trying to prove that the world is young and use it to change the world around them, feed the hungry, take care of the kids, get the cats off the streets, anything that our world would be so much better, but they waste so much time and energy and effort on disproving that the world is old, and that's just brilliant. I mean, I happen to agree with her, 1,000-fold on that.
Her rhythm in the quotation was so good too, and I listened to it again, and she's like listing these things, and it wasn't an and thing. She wasn't saying, well, you have to do these things to make the better world. She was just like, any one of these things off my arbitrary list, which I think she made up on the spot. And she's like, well, feed the
hungry, get the cats off the streets. I mean, basically, if you're going to be a Christian, don't waste your...
Yeah, that was the last one. She goes, feed the hungry, and then there's something else, and then she goes, like, get the cats off the street.
I love that.
Like, just anything. Yeah, no, it's such a great quote.
Well, she's probably a humanitarian and PETA member.
Whoever's saying it and whoever's making the argument of, well, your time could be so much better spent. I mean, well, that's a load of shit.
Well, like Ben Kissling, maybe,
because all of that could be said to us. You guys could be doing something productive instead of talking about how stupid young Earth creation is. I mean, once you start down that road.
Well, here's the rebuttal to that. It's pretty simple. Like Ben Kissling said, well, hey, Mary, why aren't you out there feeding the hungry? Well, see, Mary's doing something. She's educating students, and these students are going to be very successful. And between all of her students, I'm sure many of them will be very charitable and will donate to things. So her taking the steps to do something other than just, provide one charity, she's educating a future generation that would probably put more in the coffers of charities than anything that she would do solo. And plus, she's, giving these people careers. She's doing her part because that's her field. This is what she does, right? And as far as the rest of us, we all play a little minor part, right? But we're not trying to convince people of the antithesis of what the science is demonstrating, right? I'm not out there.
That's true. We're not out.
Yeah, I'm not out there promoting some weird thing that I have no evidence for. Like, say, hey, Hogtie, do you know that I have evidence that the Earth is hollow? And then, not really give you anything, but the Earth is hollow, and spend every day on the internet trying to convince people that the internet is hollow.
Oh, wait.
The Earth is hollow. That's what they do.
Donald Trump has telekinetic powers.
Well, that's true.
Only when he's taking a dump.
Oh, by the way,
Well, you know,
He moved the
go ahead.
shower curtain back and forth. He turned the
real quick, we will be having a hangout on Trump. People have been asking for it because even I am kind of appalled at his immigration thing going on right now. I don't agree with him at all, because even though I'm not a fan of Muslims, I'm not trying to say that I accept Muslims as an peaceful religion, but it is a religion, and most of them are peaceful. I'm not Islamophobic, but I'm just not a fan of Muslims. But it is a religion, and you certainly cannot ban people or stop their visas, especially from countries where they've never had a problem. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Well, I can't stand Islam, but like you said, most Muslims I meet are pretty okay.
Yeah, I don't know what he's trying to accomplish
But
here.
I still have to criticize their religion. I still feel.
Well, I do too, but I mean, that's a future hangout coming up if anyone wants to talk about that then. But I think the overwhelming consensus is that, they don't really understand.
Hey, thanks for hanging out, team. I got to go. Great hangout.
Thank Blue.
Oh, and I was just going to agree with Blue's point. I mean, I agree. Let's, if we want to be strictly logical about it, this whole argument, well, you could use your time better. Well, that doesn't address any actual argument presented. We're not defeating the creationists by saying, well, they should be doing something else. That's totally off topic, but that's also not what she was addressing. She was answering a specific question from, I believe it was Paul Apologia, saying, about the Great Commission, right? And I'd refer to that in my question to her. But she's saying they're off mission, and it's not just that they're not doing something else that would be helpful, but instead they're doing this other thing. They're doing something that isn't helpful. It's actually destructive, either for, and like I told her, I said, she did go on at length about saying, well, it's important that people know they have a savior, and I told her, I tried to be polite about it. Hopefully, I was successful. That I don't really care about that. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of hard for me to say, okay, I get your point, but I don't care that you're concerned that those people are not being good emissaries for Christ. Like, why should I care that you think that?
I understand what you're saying on that, but I mean, I'm trying to look at it from her point of view that if somebody is going to profess to be Christian, they should be at least not hypocritical and be a good emissary. And the fact that the young earth creationists, some of them believe it's a salvation issue, and I get that. They want to save people's souls. They think that's the Great Commission, is to save their souls by convincing people the earth is 7,000 years old, which to me I don't get. Why would God make this big old universe and make all these different things like the Bible and have faith, and yet say, hey, you know what? If you don't believe that the earth is 7,000 years old, you're automatically condemned. You don't have to accept my son. You don't have John 3:16. It doesn't matter whether you believe in Christ. It doesn't matter about anything else. You've got to accept that the earth is young. That's just not even what I ever, when I was growing up and I was going to Christian things. No, that is never anything that ever got brought up. None of these guys I've ever known were young creationists. I don't think I ever even met one until much later in life. So I don't know how that would be a salvational issue.
Well, let me beat the new drum that I just recently started beating here, as I hope other people pick it up too. You don't have to credit me with it. We sometimes go, why are these guys doing this? Why do they do this? Why do they do that? It came up just this morning in terms of a conversation that Andrew Rappaport attempted to have with Joe Sonseed, because it was clear that Rappaport didn't understand what Joe Sonseed was saying with regard to the that dilemma that everybody talks about. There we go. There we go. Euthyphro.
Euthyphro. Sorry. Yes, Euthyphro. Everybody has a hard time with that word too. Euthyphro dilemma.
Yeah. It's super famous, and I think Andrew did pronounce it correctly, but he totally missed the point of what it was. And he was rude and dismissive and flustered. It was clear he just didn't have an answer for Joe. And he was muting Joe all the time. He accused Joe 3 times. He accused Joe of being dishonest. And then criticized Joe for when Joe said that, well, you don't need to launch into a personal attack. And he says, oh, well, me telling you that you're using a straw man isn't a personal attack. And Joe was like, well, that's not what I was referring to. I'm referring to, and then Andrew just cut him off. And it was obvious. You can't come into a conversation and call me dishonest, call me a liar. And then when I say, well, you don't need to go to personal attacks, don't then say, well, now I'm objecting because you don't agree with my argument. Like, come on. But anyway, but the point about why are they doing this? Why do they do this? You used the term a moment ago, Steve, saving souls. These people are not interested in saving souls. In whether or not they don't, most of them don't even claim to want to save souls because that's not their job. As Arcane puts it, that's above my pay grade. The Holy Ghost, they work that stuff out. That's how that's done. My job's just to spread the message, is what they claim. Some of them want to save souls, they'll say, but that's not true either. Even their claim that they are there to spread the gospel, also not true. From what I've seen of their conduct over years of doing this, is they are tired of being told that they're stupid. If you are a Christian, I'm going to put that in quotation marks because I'm quoting them when they say if you're a Christian. What they really mean is if you're an evangelical, an American evangelical young earth creationist, people are going to tell you that you're stupid. People are going to tell you you don't understand science. They're going to say you reject science. They say you don't get philosophy. They're going to say you have poor reasoning skills. These are the things that people say about Christians. Again, that's them using the word for these radical evangelicals. And what the message is, Nephilim Free has been doing this for years, Institute for Creation Research, this is their main product. Their product is, no, you're not stupid. They're stupid. They're stupid and evil and misguided and deceived, and they are here to deceive and misguide other people. So no, you're not the stupid one. Everybody else is stupid. So take that, what I'm telling you now about what their real message is. They're not talking to us. They're talking to their fellow believers. And go ahead and watch any video that, for example, True Empiricism or Nephilim Free or G-Man or any of those other guys have put up, or anything you read from the ICR or anything that Kent Hovind ever says, and view it under that light, that they're not talking to you, they're not talking to me, they're not talking to Catholics. They're talking to their fellow radical evangelicals, and they're saying, no, you're not stupid. They're the ones that don't have any moral compass. Well, they probably are pedophiles.
Well, G-Man has something called preaching to the gospel ministries. I mean, he obviously is only talking to people that already agree with him. But I think you're absolutely right. They're not talking to the agnostics, to the atheists, to the other people in the community. You think that if they were wanting to save people's souls, they were a little bit more compassionate. They'd be a little bit more understanding, a little bit more wanting to have conversations of a polite nature. I don't think any of them know how to at this point. So yeah, they don't care about saving souls. It's just a gimmick they have.
Yeah, the Bible Thumping Wingnut Network. Now they call it the Bible Thumping Wingnut Network. It's on an upswing. It's a network of these ministries. I think there are 6 ministries included in it now for a total. So sorry, if you add up the population of all 6 of these ministries, that's 6 people, because there's 6 one-man ministries, and their whole. Now joining the Bible Thumping Wingnut Network, the Saving Grace, whatever ministries that, they just add, we got a new ministry. Yeah, well, it's just another guy who's going to join your Google Hangout on Sunday night. And their whole message is, you don't need to feel bad about being a believer. You don't need to feel bad about thinking the earth is young. You should feel bad about thinking the earth is flat, because remember, those particular guys reject that. And they will, on the one hand, turn to, I'm going to pick on Arcane in this case, because they have actually done this and they've done it publicly. They've turned to Arcane and they've said, you hurt the gospel message when you say that the earth is flat. It's not a salvific issue. You shouldn't bring it up at all. You shouldn't be talking with this. You're hurting the message. Then they'll turn around and talk to Fiona, for example, and tell her that she doesn't know what she's talking about when it comes to genetics because of something that Andrew Rappaport thinks he remembers reading 20 years ago, and that's why she's wrong about everything she knows in genetics. But somehow he's not hurting the gospel message by discussing issues of science and fact and reality with somebody who's an expert in reality, and him getting all of his facts wrong.
Well, everything he said in that last couple, I don't know how long it's been, but the hangout that I last saw, he made not just 1, not just 2, not just 3, but I'm talking probably half a dozen or more major scientific faux pas. I mean, he was just across the board wrong. I mean, he was talking about blue stars being produced in the Oort cloud. I mean, that's practically potato.
That's so funny. I was reaching for my mute button to go, blue stars in the Oort cloud.
What the hell does that even mean?
That was gold.
You can't just make something like that up. I couldn't even, my wildest imagination could never created something out of the top of my head. So I don't know where he came up with that from.
That was so good. And actually, only be rival. Oh, go ahead, please.
No, Hogtie, I want to, before you go, wait, are you going, Hogtie?
No, I was saying you go ahead, please, because I've been.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
go ahead, please.
No, I completely concur with Hogtie because.
Who doesn't?
I've been conjecturing on that point. I find it quite, laughable depressingly laughable that you have all these ministries popping up, especially online. They give off this, the Bible thumping wing of ministry and all these other ministries that is, and even they advertise themselves like, oh, tomorrow we're gonna be and logical, that logical guy, Jason, when he's debating Joe, Logical's ministry.
Oh no, you're talking about the logical theist? Is that the logical Christian? The logical Christian? Yeah, vaguely.
Ministries, yeah.
Yeah, Shudder.
And
yeah.
it's something that I believe where I'm wondering if I hate to say this, like I hope it's wrong, but for them to have any form of fulfilled purpose in life, that this is like their last straw, so to speak, like that they find this stuff easy to blend in, and so they go into it, and hence self-identity that, oh, look, this is something I've accomplished. Hence, it's not for the true purpose of saving people, and hence, going along with why you're an atheist, what is evolution, that sort of dialogue. No, in this regard, it's this is what I've come to accept. This blends with makes me feel good, and I'm going to try and push it on to others. If there's a success in that, then wow, brilliant, like praise God, because I've been able to convert Christianity. And that's not a genuine, I've been thinking the same thing, Hongtai. I've been wondering why do they truly believe it's wrong? I mean, never mind the flat earthers, but why do you truly believe this stuff?
Because they
is it
think
because
that
of
no,
or is it a form of self-worth?
It's intricately intertwined with their own faith. If anything about what we're telling them is correct, they're gonna. Ooh, what's the feedback? In their mind's eye, their faith lessens. They lose their belief system. If anything we're saying, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be innocuous. It doesn't have to be something even that controversial. It's if they give anybody in our side any recognition for something they got correct, they really think that somehow that's kind of, putting themselves down as Christians, or they just have to be right. Period. Under all conditions. And by the way, Hogtie, real quick, go look on your outside instant message for Gmail. Bill Ludlow made a really cool meme. I mean, this thing's brilliant. You're gonna love this.
I'm sorry, where would I find it?
It's in the external chat, the
Okay.
Gmail external chat, the outside feed.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to. I know how to get to it. I'll take me a moment to find it. As I'm on my mobile device, but I'm near the computer, so I'll take a look.
It's really.
But I really want to endorse General's the first half of his point there about why are they doing this, and you think that it gives them some comfort and some purpose. Like, they're none of these guys are going to claim to have ever come up with a cure for cancer or a recipe to solve problems in the Middle East, right? They're not going to be big achievers, but none of us are. This is something, as you approach middle age and you go through middle age, we all suffered this. I will admit publicly. Now we're going to do a little hogtie counseling session here. Like, I'm in my late 40s, and I look at my life and I go, what have I done? I've wasted my life. And you if you had my resume in one hand and you hear me say those words, you would think, okay, well, this guy needs psychiatric help now, because that's crazy that he thinks that. But we all think that. The way that we learn to get past it is to recognize we all feel like we should have done better than what we've actually achieved in our lives. I should have more money. I should have more fame throughout the world. But I don't. And we all feel that way. And what we need to do is to draw comfort from the fact that this is just a normal human experience. As people age, they start to get through this thing. And you know what? Just set your alarm, put your head to the pillow, get up in the morning, and live your next day. That's the way we get through it. For those guys, some of them, and this is the minority, this is the ones who end up showing up as the talking heads on YouTube. And again, the Nephilim Freed's the best example. I'm going to go to that because he and I used to be quite good friends, and I understand how his life has gone for him, how he wishes it were different, but how much joy he derives from his very, very powerful presence on YouTube. Like when somebody flags a video of his, he's so happy because that means he knows that Satan knows what a good job he's doing. And there's a number of occasions that since he's had that YouTube channel, that he's made the public declaration that Satan has tried to take down his YouTube channel because it's so effective at saving souls. And the reason that he and I aren't friends anymore, not my end of it, his end of it, he kind of broke things off because in his view, I was placed here by Satan to break his faith. I have told him, I've told other people, I have no interest in breaking his faith. I do not want to live in a world where Nephilim free does not believe in God. I do not want that man to be an atheist and me have to still share the planet with him. I find I should list the reasons it might be obvious to people. I'll tell you the story of Nephilim free, how it ends. His life, like the rest of us, we will all die. There will be a day that he closes his eyes for the last time. And as he does so, he's going to be comfortable in the thought of knowing that he's got a YouTube channel and he's spread the word, and at every turn, you know, he's filled every minute with 60 seconds run in terms of spreading the word, and in his mind, people have come to Christ because of his contributions on YouTube, and he will slip into that dark night with a smile on his face and genuine comfort because in his view, he's made the world a better place for doing that. And in my view, that's why they do it.
Yeah, well,
talking about Nephilim free dying kind of killed the conversation.
Well, I mean,
that was weird.
Well, I was typing something, but I was listening. Yeah, I mean, but see, I think they have this false sense of bravado that, like you said, that they actually think that they're actually doing something substantial. I don't know anybody that can say, hey, you know what? If it wasn't for G-Man, I'd be lost. Can he even list anybody, give him a name of somebody that, you know, somehow converted to his way of thinking? It may happen, don't get me wrong, and if it does, right? I mean, he's a charismatic individual, but that doesn't mean he's right. I let the evidence and the facts speak for themselves, and that's something that they cannot do. That's why they never discuss the actual facts. That's why we don't have conversations with them anymore. They never did. In fact, in all of Ronnie's videos, all his Bring in Evolution series, how much really talk did he have about the actual science? I really didn't see much of it. Hexapod, when Hexapod was in there, they did. He talked a lot about it, but Ronnie, not so much.
Yeah, well, as I say, their message is more about how they're not the stupid ones, everybody else is. Actually, I would put Ronnie a peg up above a lot of these guys in this regard, and even Nephilim free, where they actually do go look for things to talk about. I mean, the conversation always very quickly dwindles into, yeah, well, they have no moral compass and blah, 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 blah. And it goes into more of an anti-atheism kind of thing. But at least, you know, at least he wants to talk about ATP mayonnaise and Nephilim free wants to talk about the emerald cockroach wasp. They want to talk about those things. It's always a piece in the larger tapestry of how everybody else is wrong and they're evil. And no, dear believer, you're not so stupid as they say. But that's sort of referring to, yeah, that's sort of referring to.
That'll never die.
I know, it's so good though. Well, because it is gibberish. He doesn't understand it. You know, it's just gibberish. And I would love to prove that to him in a hangout that he doesn't understand it. He knows the words and he can say adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine faster than I can. Blah, 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 blah. He can spit those words out faster than I can. But that doesn't mean he understands it. And I could easily demonstrate that in a hangout if he were ever open to having an actual conversation with somebody, which he used to be, but he's not anymore. So that'll just never happen. But yeah, they lost my point here. I tried to glance at that thing. I learned a new. That Bill said it's good. That's funny.
Speaking of those nocturnal spaces, I learned a new mnemonic the other day, and I'm gonna give you Hogtie the mnemonic, and you tell me if you recognize it or you know what that it represents. Ready? Because I was okay. Ready? Private Tim Hall. What is that the mnemonic for? PVT TIMHALL. PVT is private. Tim Hall. Do. Anybody else can answer too. Don't look it up. No Googling.
Yeah, I'm not Googling, but
let's leave it in the live feed. Maybe I'll give you some hints. You can ask. You know what? We're gonna have some fun. We'll play 20 questions. I'll answer yes or no. You know what? I like playing these kind of games. So go ahead, ask me questions. I'll give you yes or no. We'll see if you can give me what this mnemonic is. What is a list for? And I'll give you one hint. It's something we have talked about, you and I.
Well, I'm leaning towards amino acids, but there's so many letters in it.
That's what I was.
Phenylalanine, phenylalanine, valine.
Wait.
Okay, well, sorry, you asked me to deconstruct it or just tell you what it is?
No, but you said amino acids, but what type of amino acids? More specific, please.
The shit.
Don't get too technical.
Valine. Hold on a second. Valine is. Okay, sorry. PVT, HLL.
Don't overanalyze it.
I might be at risk of doing that.
Yes, you are. There's 10 amino acids that are quote essential amino acids. So these are the essential amino acids.
Oh, okay. Oh, so there's some. Okay, so you'd want a mnemonic to memorize them separately from the others?
Yes.
Okay, I thought you were going for the is it the hydrophilic side chain thing? But yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah. So yeah.
And you know what
I just want to know which ones are essential, which ones we can't produce, and that was the.
Dietary essential. I got you. Okay,
essential,
I
right.
got you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Phenylalanine, valine,
threonine, tryptophan, isoleucine, methionine, histidine, arginine, leucine, and lysine. Yeah, I got to memorize now. I can pull a Ronnie, but it's a mnemonic, right? So I mean, once you learn the mnemonics, things are a little easier to memorize.
I'm going to say, well, you bested me on that one because I would not have been able to come up with that list. I got the two, but valine I always remember for some reason. But yeah, I mean, you got through all 10 of them in like 3 seconds. So yeah, you bested me there.
Well, once you learn the mnemonic, it's
beaten by Ronnie and G Menon. Yeah.
But I mean, I still wouldn't mind you doing
a just quickly. Sorry to cut in.
Yeah, go
ahead. I just want to also conclude with this that the G3 conference that just went by. So Andrew and all those guys were.
Yeah, I saw.
They were at the.
I saw the speakers list, but I'm not familiar with the content of it. I'm sort of not interested. So, but yeah, go ahead.
So the Bible thumping Lena crew, they had a table and all that, and they had a 16-year-old boy introduce himself to Andrew and those guys. So when the G3 conference finished and when it came back to the usual Bible thumping, program, this kid came on the show and Matt Slick was on the show and we met the 16-year-old and here he is in the room and he's right on point with Reformed theology and blah 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 and all that. And kudos to the kid. Kudos. He's quite articulate at that age. But again, just following from our discussion, the context of what we were just, the kid was pretty much regurgitating what Matt Slick wants to hear. And it's interesting that Christians who don't the same terminology or the same way of thinking and all these guys, then you're not part of their clique. You're not part of their way of thinking and hence history. And now that I have been involved with Andrew's Bible studies, he's on his Striving for Eternity YouTube page. He's going through Ephesians right now. He'll, point out a certain technical context because I myself have written a commentary on Ephesians. And it's much beyond anything that they're presenting. And even Andrew has personally told me that, look, what you're writing there is a lot technical than what we are planning to do here. But he has slowly warmed up to the content. But the point is that a newcomer, if he go as they have, they are immediately added into the group. If someone like me, a fellow Christian, who doesn't talk their lingo, I'm seen as a distant individual that needs to, learn their ways or something like that. And I find that quite.
That's a great point. It is a great point, and it's funny that you had that example. It's a great example of like a 16-year-old that isn't even engaged in some of these philosophical issues, and not that it's important that you're an expert in philosophy to be a good follower of Christ, but biblical literacy is kind of an important thing, and your ample biblical literacy is not to your credit or benefit when you're talking to them. All you would need to do is to have the words, as you say, like it's about picking up their jargon and talking the way they talk. And I mean, anybody could just come along and parrot what they're saying, and they would automatically be deemed brilliant. Whereas everybody else who says something different or takes up a different interpretation, oh, well, you're confused, or here's where you're going wrong. Here, this is Rappaport's big lines. You listen to how, I mean, do a shot every time Rappaport says, oh, here's where you're not understanding, or here's where you're confused. I've already corrected you. I corrected you on this.
Oh, God. He does
and now you're repeating it.
Every episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard him say that many times.
Yeah, this idea of correcting is really big with those guys. And as long as what you're saying agrees with what they're saying, then you're brilliant. And if you say something different, well, then you need correction. And as soon as they've said it once, even if they misunderstand, you know, what you mean, and you try to clarify it, he goes, well, I've already corrected you. Yeah. And there's no discussion.
Yeah,
right?
and I'm quoting verbatim. Matt Slick was like, oh, this 16-year-old kid's, he didn't say the 16-year-old kid, I'm just saying it for context. The 16-year-old kid's explanation of Reformed theology is, quote, like music to my ears. I'm going, oh my gosh, he's a newcomer, he's a 6-year-old kid. Yeah, he's quite great. Intelligent. But hang on a second. Whenever I've inputted some content in here, none of you guys went, oh yeah, that's a brilliant point. Like, only Reformed theology that is then classified as, you know, a brilliant point. So, you know, you've been noticing things that I've also been noticing with these groups.
Well, that must mean we're both right.
Yeah, and that's a biblical point. If 2 or 3 witnesses agree, then yeah, it's a true point.
By the way, I sent that meme to Dr. Schweitzer. I think she'd get a kick out of it. Is that good or what?
Well, you know what's funny? I bet you, and I wonder what her reaction would be. I bet you she doesn't remember saying it. I bet you she remembers the general point because it came from the heart.
I'm sure she.
But I remember, like, in the more active days of the Magic Sandwich Show, there'd be people who do these meme poster things. Sometimes agreeing with what I said, sometimes like mocking something I said. I mean, my favorite was the one about beating a black man. I don't know if everybody remembers that one. I was really uncomfortable when I saw it, but I had to laugh. It was so funny. But when they do it, you're like, oh, where did you get that quotation from? And then you have to listen to the show again and realize, oh, I did say that. You just have to edit out the stammers.
Well, I mean, it was very spontaneous, but it was such a good quote. I mean, I think the entire hangout kind of like centered around that one little soundbite. Even though Paul wanted some other ones, he was able to get a few. But I think that quote might go on to be promulgated throughout the other communities, but we'll see.
Yeah. Did you know which one I'm talking about? The beating a black man. It was called the hog tie hypocrisy thing.
No.
Oh, it was probably 2 years ago, maybe 3. But it's somebody made one of those meme poster things, and it had me with like a terrible look on my face. It was really unflattering. This was not a good hog tie moment. That particular still frame. My mouth's open, my hands in the air, like I'm gesturing, like I'm saying something profound. I look like an asshole. And it's got hog tie hypocrisy. I was like, oh, this is good. Like, you know, but it was actually kind of funny because it said, says he's opposed to beating and owning slaves, but has beaten and owned this man. And there was an arrow pointing down in the bottom corner to a picture of G-Man. That's like, no. Okay, I could live with that. The ugly photo I could live with because that's actually kind of funny.
Oh, you know, I haven't even looked. I've been doing some other things, so I didn't know who was even still in here. Basically, didn't realize it was like down to 4 people. Oh well. Oh, we got Pseudo coming in. Do we even have people watching? I don't even know what's going on. I'm doing 3 different things at once here.
I have a question.
Oh, shit, we got 50 viewers. What the hell did you all come from? I'm serious. I was thinking like probably 5 people watching this, but we have 50 people watching now. Wow. Well, come on in, people. I have
What are
room
you
for
saying there,
23
Steve?
more.
That your channel has now tripled its viewership?
Since you came in.
Yeah. See that?
Yeah.
See, people come because I'm here.
Of course. Well, we've been saying that for years.
Yeah.
Get a few more people, get a few more famous people here, and you'll catch up to Ronnie's numbers.
Yeah, I know, because I mean,
Yeah, you'll have what?
I'm dying
18?
to be like his channel. That's my goal this year, is to emulate his format, which means I'm going to start being belligerent to all of you, start muting you, and kick you all out at some point. So just be prepared, okay?
I have a question. It's going to kind of back up things. But when I first came in, I just caught the tail end of something about that someone was trying to raise money for a laboratory.
Well,
No,
Roohif was kind of doing
Well, I tell you, I just caught something.
Or was it a lavatory?
Laboratory. Well, I heard that too, and he I believe 2 or 3 times used the figure of he was putting together a laboratory for $5,000.
He
and
who?
then Roohif.
Oh.
Wait.
Yeah.
A laboratory.
A laboratory.
Not a laboratory, not a lavatory. For $5,000.
It centers around a min ion, which some people now call the minion. And he's got some experiments planned that involve pig DNA. Perhaps there's some other farm animals involved in this. I don't know. I didn't hear all of that, but I remember him saying that he's already acquired the min ion, and then he's been in contact with some people that would be able to provide these samples. And then he did discuss a little bit about what the inquiry was going to be. The thing I did not hear him say was that he was asking for some sort of GoFundMe Kickstarter things that people would send him money to pay for it.
No, he's
okay. All right.
Okay.
In a laboratory, I'll let you choose whatever kind it is. How far would $5,000 go?
Well, in 1995, it would be enough to buy the first couple of computers you need to be able to answer email from your department chair, and that'd be about it.
Okay. And today-ish?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't buy lab equipment anymore.
Oh, you don't buy lab equipment anymore.
It's enough to get for what he needs to do.
You could get 5 computers to answer the emails.
For what he wants to do, I guess it's enough.
So where's he going to get his pig DNA samples? He's just going to go out and buy like...
Piggy. No, I think he's trying to find corresponding evidence of the human chromosome fusion in pig DNA. Like he did, remember he was showing people the Munchak deer fusions? I think he's trying to find something along those lines in the pigs.
And is it a minion or is it a min ion? What is this
People
thing?
call it a minion.
Manufacturer calls it a min ion, but quite quickly the name got out to be minion, and some people have even put like decorated their unit to be minion color and shape.
Christopher mentioned something about it in the chat.
Anyways, I put the link in the video description. I thought I did before, but I guess I forgot. So if you don't see it, all you gotta do is refresh, and you can come join us. I got room for 20 more people.
Yeah, Christopher said the minion is 1,000. The cheap cycler is 2,000. Pipettes are $125 each.
Pipettes. $125. Damn.
I'm not sure.
Seriously?
Wow. $125.
How much is a good graduated cylinder nowadays?
It depends on how far I went in school.
Oh, dude, I was never a big fan.
You went there.
I admit that.
So somebody play that rim shot sound effect from Google Effects.
Yeah, you won't be able to do it here in August. They're taking away all the effects and all the API calls.
They're taking away our toys.
I know. Not that I've ever really used them anyways.
Well, we owe you a rim shot there, Pseudo. I did say rim shot. I didn't mispronounce that, did I?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I don't think you said job.
Oh, there's the min ion. I want to see what. No, that's a diving helmet.
Well, I would like. I know Roohif had to go. maybe this is a point you can pick up on, Steve, since you tend to be the meeting place here. I would like him to talk more about what his proposed method is. And if he wants to talk about the funding, I mean, I'm not going to say anything about how that works or how it can be done for $5,000, because like I say, I'm out of that, and I don't know what he's specifically proposing. Like I say, I didn't hear him ask for money. I mean, if he wanted to do so, then people would sort of choose. But I'm really more curious to hear what's his proposed method, what's he hoping to find from this, and I don't know, why is he doing it? It's damn interesting. I mean,
he just has an interest in it. Wants to do it. I mean,
yeah.
he's pretty set. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. By the way, when I say why, I mean the why question isn't meant. And a lot of people go, "Why do you want to do that?" And it's not a question; it's a snotty comment. I literally mean, like, why do you want to do this? Because that's interesting. Remember, you're talking to the guy that measured the diameter of the moon in the arc in arc seconds. It's about 1900 arc seconds if people are curious. Repeatedly, as a way of having something to talk about with Arcane. And why did I do that? Well, because I own the thing that does it, right? So if I owned a minion, well then hell, maybe I'd be asking farmers for pig's blood. I guess no, you don't want to do it with the blood. Can you get a cheek swab from a pig?
Well, you got pig cheek.
You just have to be careful. Count your fingers.
Yeah, they're vicious buggers.
Well, they are talking about growing organs in pigs, human organs in pigs. So.
Well, they've been doing that for a while. I mean, pigs have been always like the more likely thing for transplants because, Hogtie, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't want to use things like chimp or baboon hearts for one of two reasons. One, people find to be unethical because they're so similar to us, plus there's more chance of infectious diseases from that kind of cross-species transmission than would be from a pig. Is that correct?
Yeah, and actually it turns out, I mean, even if you're using transplant from human to human, they're never perfect anyway. So there's all sorts of things you got to check for and deal with to deal with these rejection issues anyway. And it turns out that as long as you're not going out too far, like you couldn't use a crocodile heart, for example.
But I think people would be up in arms around efficacy to have, let's breed chimpanzees or baboons for their hearts and organs. I don't
know, man. We get past it. I tell you, as a species, we managed to overcome a lot of ethical challenges.
Yeah.
We got past like I was saying earlier in the Hangout. There was 400 years ago, people said, what do you mean? Well, after people are dead, we're going to take their earthly remains and cut it up just so you can just satisfy your curiosity about what makes us tick? Right? That was a big issue 400 years ago. Whereas now, and like I say, I do think it's an uncomfortable reality. Not everybody, but we are, it's not uncomfortable. I think people in the live chat think, are you comfortable with the fact that some percentage of human beings that die are given to students to take apart so that they can practice taking things apart?
I have no issue with that whatsoever. If people want to donate their body to science.
Well, Hogtie, if it means that student learns something about what they took apart,
yeah, and
they learn how to put it back together, that benefits everyone.
I don't need my body after I'm dead. Do what you want with it. But Hogtie, I got to ask you. I mean, what percentage do you think people that when they first, do their first gross anatomy cadaver dissection? By the way, don't you start off with like minor stuff for the cadaver first before you like dig in the big stuff? Don't you like kind of do like minor stuff? But how many like literally just can't hack it and pass out or say screw this, I'm done, I'm changing my major to economics or something?
I would say it's. I mean, how do you put a number on it? I'm going to put it as almost none.
Really?
Like less than 1%. Yeah.
God, I would think that they would have a high attrition rate.
Oh, come on, Steve, you missed it there. You don't change your major to economics. You can't hack it. Cutting up a cadaver. You go change your major to women's studies or something.
Women's studies. Yeah, good point. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, I mean, there really aren't that many cadavers too, so they don't just hand them out. You got to be at a particular place in one of the two programs that I'm aware of where you're permitted to be admitted into a gross anatomy class.
Well,
and as you point out,
cadaver,
by then,
right? You have like multiple people working on one cadaver, don't you?
Not really. Yeah, it's multiple people. I've heard that you get your own cadaver. It's not quite. It's a team, right? and you sort of move around and do various things. And they do strange things like they cover the face and things like that so that people aren't weirded out and stuff. But by that point, you ought to have had some dissection and even some vivisection experience in other courses you've taken. I mean, even undergraduate courses, they take apart pig fetuses. Like, you know, so I mean, you have to have some familiarity with cadavers of other creatures, you know, and some comfort in actually taking a scalpel to one. And so it's not something that people are all of a sudden get icked out by it. There certainly is a different psychological element to it because a lot of them are old, I'll say. You don't get a lot of like 16-year-old car accident victims. Generally speaking, these are elderly people who passed away naturally. So you get a lot of like, you look and you're like, this was someone's grandfather. And that's weird, but not so weird to discourage somebody who went through all the time and effort it would take to qualify and register for and participate in, for example, the MD program. They're not going to, you know, run off to women's studies.
See, I remember I've had to dissect a frog and I had to dissect a cow heart.
Oh yeah,
and a chicken heart.
That's so weird. I was just showing my kids a cow heart at the grocery store yesterday.
It doesn't even look like a heart.
Well, it kind of did to me, but I mean they're sectioned, but yeah, that's what they look like.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just,
Actually, Steve, this is something
It looked
weird
like a big-
that
big-
I
big-
remember
big-
from
like-
high
like-
school.
I just say it looked like a pot roast.
I remember doing the dissection of a fetal pig in high school.
Yeah, we did do a pig too. You're
Now, we never did frogs, but before we did frogs, we did an earthworm. Okay. I don't know why we did earthworms and then pigs. There's like a huge gap in between. But what kind of struck me as weird is there were two students who did the earthworm bit, but when it came to doing the pig, they had some kind of moral objection to it because killing animals is wrong.
Yeah.
But 3 days ago, you cut up an earthworm.
But
Yeah, it's you got to draw that boundary somewhere, and that's why I think it was interesting when Steve was saying about the baboons and the chimpanzees, and like some people want to put that line
Hogtie, they
outside
went
of primates.
further. They wouldn't eat meat. They were going through that high school vegetarian crap.
Yeah,
But the thing was, 3 days ago, you cut up an earthworm, and now you won't cut up a pig that was never born because it's a stillborn.
Yeah, I can tell you why they do earthworm first, and that is no blood vessels. So that whole what's the word I'm looking for? Not kingdom, phylum. Where am I on the chart there? They don't have blood vessels. They circulate nutrients and oxygenation, get rid of waste products through hemocoel. So it's a big open chamber.
Right.
And even
I was thinking
like
nematodes for some reason. I don't know why. But earthworms aren't a nematode, are they?
I don't think so.
I'm trying to remember.
They're segmented, so I think they're not nematode. I'd have to look it up.
Nematodes aren't segmented?
I'm not sure, and I'm sure corrections will pop up in the live chat in about 40 seconds. So, but they're all of those creatures that have hemocoel instead of a closed circulatory system. They're even the clumsiest, unskilled, nervous kid can take them apart simply. Once you've made that first long longitudinal incision, you can then unfold the outside and then pin it down, and then you can look and see all the organs. But so you did the fetal pig dissection. Okay, do you have a memory of the first opening incision, right? And how once you get the zipper done, right? Let's call it that. That then you're now sort of wrestling with other bits of connective tissue, and there's things hooked up to things, and it's a bit more of a challenge to not just hack away at it. Or you found it easy. I don't know.
I actually found it easy because I found it easy to do. We had a list of things that we had to do, like locate certain organs, sex the pig, like identify its gender, if it's male or female. There's a couple other things we had to do as well. Once we were done that, we were permitted to do what we wanted to it, provided we simply just didn't hack it up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I remember taking
the bone.
I remember cutting the top of the skull off and taking getting the brain out and removing the eyes, and basically, to me, it's the skull was more interesting than the body part, right?
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to say, was that once you get to the skull. Yeah, basically the blood vessels and bones and all that connective tissue really presents a challenge, until you sort of develop some skills around using the tools. It presents a bit of a challenge. You're not just busting stuff and hacking it up. And then the next example I was going to go to was the skull. Skull is extremely challenging to open in a safe, let's call it non-destructive way.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to. There's no such thing as non-destructive
well, okay,
skull opening, but not just
delicate.
Yeah. And I'm so. I mean, it's interesting though. Like, I think often when you get a chance to show students brains, you generally have one that was extracted elsewhere under other circumstances, and then you're like, oh, here's a brain from whatever species that's from.
Yeah.
And certainly with the human brains, I mean, when you show that to, like, for example, most psychology programs, you have a chance to go into a lab and actually look at a real human brain from a cadaver extraction. But then you're not getting anywhere close to the cadaver because these are psychology students, and they're sort of better off not seeing the process that's required for that extraction, whereas the medical students actually do see it.
Yeah.
It's not like you think. It's not what Hannibal Lecter did, I'll say, in whatever the sequel.
Oh, that was a
Silence of the Lambs movie
3,
was.
I think, wasn't that? Where he makes him eat his own brain. He's like, yo.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you can't just make a big coronal cut and then just take the cap off. That's not sort of how it's done. But whatever. Let's not morbid up your hangout.
Oh, whatever.
Well, hey, let's wreck your hangout this way because you're talking about pig DNA and human DNA. I have an uncle who told me this. He actually was a pig farmer in my community, and he said he had a neighbor who had all these female pigs and would come over to buy the semen from the bull pigs that my uncle had. And one day he came over and he says, no, I can't. I just told those guys. But you know what? I'll tell you a little secret. When I don't have the males around and I can't get the semen, I'll tell you honestly, human DNA and pig DNA is pretty much the same. So you can just do it yourself, right? And it works fine. It'll be good. It's fine. The guy says, really? Yeah, sure. So the guy doesn't want anyone to know that he's doing this. So he loads all his pigs into the truck and drives way across to a spot across the farmyard. And he's working hard. He does a whole tour, right? Gets all the pigs all settled out, puts them back in the truck and drives them back and lets them all go. And then he has to have a nap on the couch because that's hard work. And I forgot. Oh, this is terrible. I forgot part of the story. So he asked my uncle. He says, how many? How, like, it doesn't seem to work. Like, how do I know when it's working? He says, well, they don't always get pregnant every time, but when it takes, you'll know, because they tend to just instead of running around like they normally do, they'll lay down on their side, usually in the shade, and that's how you know when it took. So none of these pigs are doing. So he loads them all up in the truck again, takes them across the farm, and has another little private day on the back of the farm with his pigs, and loads them back in the truck and goes back and looks again a few days later. Nope, they're all still running around, not laying down in the shade. So for a third day, he takes these pigs out, loads them all up in the truck, takes them out across, another hard day work at the farm, brings them back. Finally, a couple days later, his wife's looking out through the curtains. And she says, "What's up with those pigs?" And he says, "Well, what are they doing? Are they laying down?" She goes, "No, they've all piled up into the truck, and one's in the front honking the horn."
Oh, that was beautiful.
That's an actual story told to me by my uncle, who actually was a great uncle, my dad's uncle, who actually was a pig farmer, and actually told this story as if true.
Tell jokes so fast. You're gonna always have a hangout. You actually, weren't you supposed to have a hangout to explain to Ronnie? What was it? I'm like, I'm gonna butcher these. The gyrus and the sulcus.
Yeah, the brain anatomy. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'll never forget that when you went on a rant with him, and you're like, "Fuck you, Ronnie. You don't even know the difference between a gyrus and a sulcus." Sulcus.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, he does it. Sulcus. Yeah.
Sulcus. Yeah. That's sulcus. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he doesn't. Well, like I say, he'd be very easy to demonstrate. He doesn't know what he's talking about because, like I say, he's got a book. He's got a biochemistry book that he found at a bus stop somewhere, and he's memorized page 268 out of it, and he knows that stuff better than I do, right? But he doesn't know what's on page 267 or 269 or anything else.
He's very myopic in scope, is he not?
Yeah. Yeah, real tunnel vision. He doesn't understand these things. And I mean, I've even offered to him better arguments than his whole thing about, you know, the beta clamps, and he's got all these little phrases he throws out. And it doesn't have any traction with people in terms of like, oh, so you're saying there's complicated stuff going inside the cell? Yeah, I kind of knew that. And oh, you're going to give me some details about how complicated it is. Well, now I don't understand what you're talking about. And you're mispronouncing words at 100 miles per hour. So I'm not learning anything from what you're saying. So how does this prove to me that there's an intelligent designer? It just, he's going nowhere with it. Where there are some solid arguments that do require a little bit of biochemistry understanding, but they're accessible to people. So the one that I presented, and I'm not going to sort of represent it here, I'm sure you guys have heard me say this before, but you must have heard me say this before under the banner of hemoglobin doesn't work the way you think it does. If hemoglobin were simply a transport molecule that took oxygen from the lungs out to your muscles in your legs and your toes, it simply would not work because there's not a sufficient concentration difference between the target tissue and the oxygenated lungs. And the actual mechanism for how hemoglobin is able to carry this off has to do with something called Hill's parameter or cooperativity, to where one hemoglobin subunit actually signals another subunit when it's a good time to pick up or a good time to release its hemoglobin molecule. Now, how that happens is absolutely amazing. And I think that hopefully that brief description is enough to sort of trigger people that there's actually communication between the hemoglobin subunits. Well, why does the first subunit have to tell the second subunit that it's a good time to unload your oxygen? How does the first subunit figure that out, right?
Oh, intelligent design.
I mean, it's intelligent design. It's absolutely fascinating. And I know when I first learned about this mechanism, I just went like, oh, there has to be a God. So I've told her twice about how I, as an atheist, learned this particular bit about biochemistry and was derailed in my belief set, figure out how this possibly could have come about through evolution or even through any. And I've twice told him this story and he's never once picked it up and thought, holy fuck, that might be an effective thing to say. Maybe I should add that to my toolbox.
Well, any of that.
Never.
Any of that.
Next time you talk to him, he's back on ATP.
I mean, even beta clamps, that's fascinating. He kept on, okay, again, correct me if I'm wrong here. Didn't he, once when he was rambling off and he would talk about beta clamps and DNA gyrates, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't gyrates only, not even, humans don't even have gyrates, they have telomerase. And he's all trying to name off all the different things going on in DNA for humans, and yet I don't think DNA has gyrates in humans, does it?
I don't know.
I think it's just telomerase, but you know those molecular machineries, amazing, right? The kinesins and all these other molecular transports, and yeah, I mean, I could look at these things and go, God damn, this is like magic. I find it to be fascinating, the complexity. Oh, even the error correction mechanism. I once tried to understand that. Holy shit, is that beyond anything I'll ever be able to, in my wildest dreams, to understand. The complexity of the error correction mechanism is just mind-boggling, the mechanism that goes in that. But I realize that if you did understand the chemistry, it would make sense, right? I mean, it doesn't require magic to invoke why this stuff works. It's just reactions of the actual enzymes in there and stuff.
Hogtie, if he had got that from the Institute for Creation Research, he probably would have swallowed it whole. But because you're an atheist, he's like, you're lying. That's probably how his brain is working.
There is that. I mean, I made the point before too about how you can't even tell him something simple like, oh, your microphone's breaking up a bit, without him having to check with a creationist, right? He simply can't believe anything we say. You're right though, Heavy Hauler, in that. I mean, it sort of shows how he's disconnected from basic human communication too, because I'm telling him not only something that's scientifically accurate and interesting, but I'm connecting it to a real world personal experience that I had around this, and he's deaf to it. He couldn't even retell the story himself now.
Yeah.
Right. And he doesn't. But yeah, if I read this on a web page that was written by a God believer, especially an atheist hater God believer, then yeah, I'm gonna absolutely drink that in. You're right. But I mean, this whole argument of, well, this is really complicated, or how would this work? You can't explain that. And we've a number of, but in particular, this thing, I'm going to use those two examples. The which he calls beta clamps. The beta clamps. Beta is a type of the Japanese fighting fish. Or ATP mayonnaise or Neff's ongoing fondness for the emerald cockroach wasp. Any of these things, you can pick up anything.
I gotta look that one up.
Yeah. Which one, the cockroach wasp?
Yeah, the emerald cockroach wasp.
Yeah, they're okay. In short, they're very. It's a wasp that can. I think it's called. Is it because they're emerald or because the cockroach? I think it's the emerald cockroach.
Oh, it's from Hawaii.
Anyway, there's one specific species of cockroach that they have to they sting a particular nerve center in the brain to immobilize them, and then they kind of drag them around, like, use the antenna to guide. They're partially immobilized. They basically turn them into zombies, and it drags this big cockroach, which is much bigger than the wasp, back to a place and then lays eggs in it, and then the young feed off of it. I mean, this is incredibly disgusting, but God created it. There has to be a designer for this disgusting process to take place. But the point to be made that
hold on.
Why
so,
would this?
So what you're telling me is, at some point during the whole period of creation, when God got down to making insects, God either was or got bored doing it the regular way.
Yeah, the insects eat
and
the plants,
wondered if this would work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's just an idea here. We're going to go out on a limb and just try this.
Yeah, that shit's too boring. Let's go do this thing. Yeah, but of course, you don't have an explanation for it, because why would this wasp have these skills to attack this particular cockroach if the wasps were around before these cockroaches were? Like how do these things come together? Well, you can find any example of parasitism, or even better, a symbiosis, especially obligate symbiosis, where the creature simply can't survive without this other creature. And you can take a snapshot of what that looks like in 2017 and say, well, I don't understand how that relationship could have developed over many, many, many generations. So therefore, they had to be separately created for each other, to be done by a god. Certainly no common ancestry. But that can be said, like, you can pick up anything. Like, why does the sun work the way the sun works? Why is Jupiter there? People tell you now, if Jupiter weren't in its size and position, then Earth would just be pelted by crap all the time. Life never would have got off the ground. But Jupiter is like the big vacuum cleaner that scoops up these little bits that some of them still hit the Earth, but not nearly as many. So why is Jupiter there? Well, you could take a look at a tree. Okay, here's my favorite. Look at the trees. That's an inside joke amongst, or not even so much an inside joke, everybody knows it. But on the Atheist Experience, they get a set of calls that they call the look at the trees caller. How can you look at the trees and not know that there's a God? Well, let's look at the trees. Let's look inside the trees. How does the water get from the ground up to the leaves on the most distant, furthest branches up from the ground? How does that happen? Dummy answer is, well, there's little pipes inside, and the water goes up through the pipes. Really? Stop and think for a second. Why would the water go up the pipes?
They have a pressure.
Right. Well, okay, so people.
Isn't it like a
water only goes up a pipe if you got a pump pressure that's pushing it up there.
Okay, wait a minute. It's not actually pipes. It's cells, like water, liquid or sap or whatever. Because some trees get well beyond the whole height of the whole water.
But trees don't have pumping mechanisms. They don't have a net.
No, but it goes into one, gets locked in, goes to the next one, gets locked in. It's not a pump like a water pump.
Right.
Creating pressure.
Yeah. And even if you tried like a siphoning mechanism, you can't siphon over 10 meters when you're at sea level, right? I mean, so you got all these problems. And in fact, it's even worse. You can't even go up to the 10 meters when you're higher than sea level. So we have these mountainous trees that are way up there. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, how does the water get up there? So somebody, as you had done here, Pseudo, you see that as an actual question and you want to explore the answer for it. If you know it, you'll share it. If you don't know it, you'll want to find out. You'll be hungry to know the actual answer.
Yeah.
But no, just forget that mindset. Just go, well, how can this happen? Like, if somebody will tell me, oh, there's osmosis, and then someone's going to try to explain osmosis to me. Like, that's going to help me understand osmosis. It's a magical force. It's a magical force.
Yeah.
But so how does that work?
So if osmosis is magical, then reverse osmosis is even more magical?
Could be. Or reverse.
No, it's that's homeopathic osmosis.
Homeopathic. Yeah, but the point is that when you say, well, how do these trees even survive like this? Well, you know what? The creator made it this way. If it's because of osmosis, well, that emerges because of the basic rules of physics, which had to have been put in place by a creator. It doesn't matter what you pick up in the world around you. If you apply this argument from ignorance strategy of thinking and saying, well, how did this come to be? Whether you're talking about the sun or Jupiter or trees and osmosis or the laws of physics or how light works or ATP mayonnaise or my concern about the hemoglobin.
Okay, is it actually called ATP mayonnaise?
It is not.
Okay.
I'm quite sure.
No.
I'm just sorry.
Joe
You
Sansi
spend enough
came
time
up
on
with
G
that.
Plus listening to the idiots. You're not quite sure what's correct anymore.
Okay, I will grant. I went to an institution that had a lot of multiple choice exams.
Yeah.
So, maybe I've got that wrong. No, it's not ATP mayonnaise. That's a joke that we've made to sort of mock Ronnie's
Like
rapid speech
I
and
missed
mispronouncing words.
the Mary Schweitzer hangout you did, Steve.
Well, you suck.
I didn't get a link. I didn't see anything on it, and then I saw it's
the prerequisite to join today is that you watch that hangout. Didn't you get the memo?
Oh well, yeah, there you go.
I completely fluffed on what was going on.
But I'm sorry.
But my point is,
so close to
I
making a
actually
point
wanted to be in there so I could ask questions to figure out what the hell this woman's actually done research on, because all the morons have said so much shit. I have no idea what's going on anymore.
Oh, did you hear the first question I asked her? Was I said, well, going back to the interview you gave with Science in Action.
She didn't remember it
for the BBC. She goes, "Oh, that was like 12 years ago." Like she just jumped on me. Like, what are you even asking me about? Oh, I barely remember that, right? but I was making the point that you are, Pseudo, that well, this is what we discuss when your name comes up. This is what is thrown in our face. Something you said to somebody in an interview 12 years ago. That then got reprinted onto the BBC's website. That is what is constantly the link that's dropped in front of us. I'm sorry. I want to wrap up my point about ATP mayonnaise, and that is that Ronnie's fascination and Neff's fascination with the wasp is that it doesn't matter. Like they seem to take this argument from ignorance and let's say you could do it with anything. Why does that pile of rocks where that pile of rocks is? Why does the Grand Canyon work the way it does? You could take anything and it will walk you back to a creator if you're incurious about how those things came to be. But some of these guys take the shtick. They say, well, if I go get some really trivial bit of arcane knowledge about nature, right? I'm not going to talk about the principles behind obligate symbiosis. But I'm a cockroach wasp that you, Steve McRae, don't know about. And we're going to talk about that. And since I'm the expert here on the emerald cockroach wasp, and you are not, then I am right on this topic, and everybody watching me sees a creationist besting you on this topic of science. Therefore, I know more about science than you, and therefore, they're not stupid, you are.
Okay,
my point.
Can you please explain the fish tongue parasite?
The fish tongue parasite?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so gross.
Or how about the was it?
Okay,
there's this little animal. Basically, it goes into a fish's mouth, deadens the fish's tongue, and then latches onto the little tongue stub there, and then pretends to be the fish's tongue. It's like
Pretty ingenious. That's intelligent design.
yeah, and then it lives in the mouth of the fish, pretending to be the fish's tongue, and then when the fish eats things, it gets a nibble.
What's the purpose of the loa worm? The parasite that lives in your eyeball.
Oh, I know Loa. That one I've seen. Yeah,
that's nasty.
Yeah,
I've seen that before.
Yeah,
nasty shit.
Well, by the time I had
now
to
that
take
is a
courses.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Oops.
What is the purpose of toxoplasma? It's the little parasite you got to catch shit.
Yeah, exactly. That's why pregnant women can't, or they shouldn't have.
Like
be pregnant women clean up cat litter boxes. Toxoplasmosis.
Yeah. What is the point of this parasite?
Living in cat shit and get pregnant women sick. I don't know.
And what it wants to do is what the parasite really wants to do is infect a mouse so that the mouse gets eaten, and then it gets into the digestive tract of another animal, and then gets back into the cat shit to infect another mouse. What the hell is it doing?
I know there are a lot of those. Yeah, where you see animals that actually, you know what's funny? I got embroiled into. I went to zoo school last week, my kids at that age where they, and I was there, and we got into a discussion with one of the other parents about the coral snake. Is it the genus or a family of king snakes? So the coral snake and the
king snake or the
milk snake.
Milk snake or king snake are the same thing. That's the same terminology for them. They're harmless though.
Oh, the king snake, is that? Yeah.
King snake is a milk snake.
Oh, right. So, sorry. Yeah. So the milk snake. But the coral snake, that's a different thing.
Yes.
And they're apparently quite deadly.
Yes. Red on black.
So the kids had told me. Okay. Yeah. So, and actually, I even retold that thing, right? So the kids were telling me that they had been petting the snake, and I was like, "You sure they had the right one? They're kind of easy to mix up, you know." And then I was talking to one of the parents there about this principle of coevolution, and I said, like, the thing with the snakes, and he hadn't heard this before, right? So and it was funny because you think this is really sort of dry scientific stuff, but I had him laughing, right? Because it's just such a goofy principle that about these two snakes that kind of look alike. They can tell each other apart, but you know the gorillas can't. And but there's all these things he didn't know about it. Like when I told him, well, the gorillas eat snakes, and he just was like, "Oh, I didn't know they do that. They eat fruit." And I said, "Oh my God, have you ever looked at a gorilla's face? Of a gorilla and those big arms and stuff? You think they're like leaning back in a tree, like just gnawing on these big yellow bananas that don't even exist in nature? No, they pick up a snake by the tail and they go whang, and they just whang them onto the ground."
Would that really be an example of coevolution? I thought that'd be an example of mimicry, but I don't. Is it?
It is, but yeah. Coevolution, because part of the selective pressure. So this is going back to the milk snake. So the milk snake develops its coloring or evolves and adapts its coloring in an environment that has other evolved creatures in it. Right? If you take the coral snake or the gorillas out of the evolutionary history of the milk snake, we wouldn't even be talking about the milk snake.
True. It'd
just be another thing that slithers around. It's interesting only because it evolved in an environment where selective pressures were created by the behavior, not just the environment. Oh, it was cold, so you need fur. Nothing like that. It was part of the selective pressures in the environment were established because of behavior of other organisms.
So what you're saying then, Hog Tie, is this is an example of intelligent design.
Clearly.
Because the gorilla has an intelligence and the thought, I'm not going to touch that when it could be poisonous.
Well, obviously, two gorillas having sex.
That's G-Man intelligence, yeah.
Two gorillas having sex is intelligently designed because they're two intelligent creatures designing something, right? According to G-Man, that's his argument.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, I like snakes. I actually used to have little garter snakes, and I do remember the mnemonic or the little phrase. Yeah, red on black, friend of Jack. Yellow on red, or yellow on red, kill you dead, or.
See, there it goes. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And even when I told the guy, I said, look, there's a little mnemonic to help you remember this. If you ever happen to be walking through this forest and you find one of these things, you got to remember that it's red touches black, you're okay, Jack. Or no, sorry, red touches yellow, you're a dead fellow.
Yeah.
Or no, I screwed it up. It's red touches black, you're dead, Jack. You know what? If you see one of these snakes, just stay away from it.
Don't take a chance. It's red on black, friend of Jack. Red on yellow, kill a fellow.
Yeah, but it was funny because he was listening when I was giving him the little mnemonic, and then when I was like, "Oh, wait a minute, I got it backwards. Oh no, hang on, just forget it, just stay away from
Don't
the
listen
snakes."
to Hog Tie. You're
going to
be dying if you get the wrong one.
Yeah, I grew up in northern Canada. What do I know about what snakes you can touch or can't touch? So, and I told him that, and then I said, and then you're laughing. You're going to stay away. No, not where I'm from.
I've never had a play. I've never seen either one.
You're too far north then.
I mean, garter. We've had garter and gopher snakes, but I've never actually seen a or I've never ran across a milk snake. So, but they're harmless. Oh, where did we go? Oh, that got awfully quiet there for a second. That's scary.
It's that pregnant silence that pops up now and then.
Hey, did you guys way off topic, moving on to something else here. Did you guys read any of the news lately about this metallic hydrogen that is getting some play, that they might have been able to first mass produce some kind of metastable metallic hydrogen, which I was reading about the other day, but I'm kind of questioning if that's actually what they discovered. Do you know anything about that, Hog Tie? Or general? Because metallic hydrogen is a state of hydrogen that's in the center of Jupiter. It's basically under so immense gigapascal pressures that it goes from a gaseous state into an actual metastable metallic state that's going to be superconductive if they actually got this to work, but it's such small quantities.
Sorry, Steve, you're breaking up, Steve.
I'm having issues with my, because you guys, I thought you guys were breaking up, but maybe it's me. But yeah, I just want to hear what you guys' thoughts on this. If this is something like like cold fusion, it's just something that's actually going to be determined to be new type of hydrogen. I mean, it's been predicted that metallic hydrogen exists, but if we can actually determine this is metallic hydrogen and be able to produce it, it would revolutionize computers as we know it, because it would actually be room temperature superconductors. No? Or anything about it?
I heard some about Paranoid had been reading up on it. He was sharing about it. Yeah, superconductor and stuff.
I figured maybe like General might. He left already.
General dropped out.
Just going through my Twitter list. Oh, speaking of Twitter, yeah, I guess Jen Peoples put a shout out to me that she did get the video for Mary Schweitzer, and she was appreciative of it. I still want to get her on my channel. I think this should be a good guest. There's a lot of people. I mean, I would like have on my channel, but. Anyways, is this dying out, people? I think so. Oh my goodness, we still have 50 people watching. Stream went dead offline for a second there. Really? Yeah, maybe I am having connections. It's back now, so let's see. The way atomic metallic hydrogen in metastable at ambient pressure and temperature could be the most powerful chemical rocket fuel as atoms recombine to form molecular hydrogen. Yeah, I can understand that, because actually you get more bang for your buck with a solid form of hydrogen. Obviously, you have much more what's called power density. So different fuels have different power densities. That's why certain fuels are more cost efficient. That's why it's pennies on the dollar for nuclear power as compared to like gasoline, because nuclear power has a far greater power density. So if you would actually have this metallic hydrogen, yes, you could actually use it for rocket fuel, and it would be very cost effective and very powerful. So yeah, I think it'd be revolutionary if they did discover that it was metastable. Now, from what I remember, the word metastable, I always thought metastable meant, and I guess I might be wrong, because I kind of looked at this the other day, and maybe I was a little corrected, but I thought metastable meant that a stable form of an isotope that was long enough to be able to measure and be at room temperature and pressures, but eventually did decay, eventually did go to some other state. That's what differentiated between metastable and stable. Now I'm kind of finding out when I read this article that they're saying it's metastable, meaning that it's actually stable. But if that's the case, then why differentiate between metastable and stable? Does that make sense? Because metastable is only supposed to be temporarily stable. Because most isotopes, when they form, do so in the matter of nanoseconds, right? They don't last very long. And then they decay into something else, because when they absorb something like a neutron, they vibrate very, very rapidly. They're just like a big blob of crap that's going on in there. And they want to find a more lower state of energy, right? A more thermally, what do they call it? A thermal, what's the term? Hawkeye, help me out. What's the most common for ground level? Thermally efficient? Is that what I'm thinking of? Well, it's a stable form that's most energy efficient, and that's what I was thinking, that the metallic hydrogen would be actually stable, not metastable. But if anybody wants to correct me on that, I'll be happy to reprise my position on that, because I always thought metastable did not mean actually stable. Is anybody even listening?
Something about it was not acted upon by something else.
Hey, maybe. Bert Poole is in the live chat. Mr. Bert Poole himself. I was going to actually ask Bert something, but I totally forgot it was. By the way, loving your stuff, Bert. Good stuff, man. I watch your
bubbles. Get him in here, because sorry.
Yes.
The timing was a little bad. I heard you sort of pleading, Steve, and I was listening, but my wife had just gotten home and we were talking about stuff, and then you changed the topic to some physics thing that, what you were talking about there to me was the ATP mayonnaise of particle physics. So I just
Metastable.
stayed muted.
Well, I'm just trying to remember what
Metastable.
the terminology is for what oh my god, yeah, energetically favorable, right? I was thinking, I was like, okay, what's the term for enzymes, right? Enzymes want to make something more energetically favorable before a catalyst, right? So these isotopes, for them to be stable, they go to a more energetically favorable state, and that's why when somebody says the word metastable, I don't take that to mean stable because it's not in a stable state yet. A stable isotope would be like iron 50. That's a stable isotope. Iron 50 will never decay into anything. It'll be around forever. Well, until the end of the universe where everything kind of like melts or whatever. But it doesn't decay into anything because it's at the lowest, most favorable energetic state. Aries says, "Do you like my stuff too?" I don't watch any of your stuff, Aries. I didn't even know you had stuff. But I'll start watching it if you get stuff. I do you have stuff, Aries 106? I don't watch, but I do watch Bert stuff. I even watched Hogtie's little thing on there.
Speaking of stuff, do you ever get curious? And not that I'm accusing him of lying about it, but I know Bert has claimed to have worked on some movies. And he actually had a really good conversation with my kids one day about a recent movie he's been working on. And I ended up looking it up to be like, is this, because he said something being credited with something. Turns out Bert, if this is the Bert Poole, not just some guy, the Valor thief or something, but if he's got an IMDb page, and I will say it's not empty.
Well, do you know Paulogia has an IMDb
and the movies
page
that Bert has told you about, that, oh yeah, I worked on that movie, I worked on that movie, they're not the only ones. He's actually got a bit of a list there.
It seemed like I looked up something like that, and there he was, Bert Poole.
Well, did you see the collector thing?
He's legit.
Did you guys see the video that he had with a collector's edition of all the DreamWorks or the Pixar videos on DVD that what's his name gave to him?
For a sec.
It was pretty nice, but the thing was expensive. Now the guy's a multi-billionaire or whatever. I mean, I think he could have bought you a car, Bert. But hey, whatever, right?
What Steve is saying is absolutely fascinating. It's too bad he's broken up and doesn't realize we can't hear you,
Am I
Steve.
hang on one sec. Okay. Testing. Is that better? Can you hear me? Testing. Okay, I reset my microphone. Is that better? Testing. Hello? Can you hear me? Anybody testing? 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Heard 1, 2.
Okay, I reset my mic. Okay, can you hear me now?
It's a bit choppy, but better.
Really? Okay, let me try a different USB port. 1 sec. Well, goddamn. Okay, different USB port. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. I was saying, did you guys see the video that Bert did where you got that collection DVD of all the things that DreamWorks had? It's actually extremely nice. But I was thinking this guy that gave it to him, I can't remember his name, is like a multi-billionaire. I was like, Bert, the least he could have done is buy you guys all fucking cars. Oprah did it to her audience. He gets your DVDs. Nice, but he could fuck.
Did she?
Okay. Okay, testing. Can you hear me?
Well, maybe he'll get back soon.
Can you hear me? Ah. Okay. Oh my God. Can you hear me? Hello? Still can't hear me? Really?
Science classes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Steve.
Oh my God, what a pain. I hate freaking Google Plus things. They just, they don't work, they don't work. It's nothing but problems. But anyway, so you can hear me now, right? Hello? Okay, now you're just fucking with me. Can you hear me? Now you can't hear me. Seriously?
Steve, we're just barely catching what you're saying. You keep going like roboting out.
Ah. All right, I give up. I give up. Is this not working now?
We heard that.
You heard that?
No, that
Yeah,
was me.
We heard that. We heard that.
Well,
You heard that?
whatever. It's too late now, but he kind of left. And I'm pretty well done anyways, so. I just wanted to. I have no idea what the hell happened. It just stopped working. So weird.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was a good hangout. Thank you guys for joining. It was very long. I didn't expect it to be this long. But
When someone just said they hear, are we live?
you can't hear me.
No, we're not.
I'm done.
No, I was
We're not broadcasting anymore.
Oh, we're broadcasting still.
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
broadcasting technical difficulties, but
Oh.
yeah, we're still broadcasting. I haven't ended the feed yet.
Yeah.
But I'm going to end it now. Sorry, guys. It's just.
So, Steve, if I look on your channel for the Mary Schweitzer hangout, which one is it?
The one that says Dr. Mary Schweitzer joins the Great Debate Community. Can't miss
Okay.
it.
It's about an hour long.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think it came out really well. I think a lot of people got a chance to ask questions.
So you hear? So, you're hearing echo. Steve is playing back the hangout.
It's not me.
Or someone was.
People.
Or somehow it was.
Anyways, you guys missed, before I sign off, you guys missed a thing about what I was saying about Bert Poole. Bert Poole had a video with these really awesome collection of DVDs that he got from the bigwig of DreamWorks. I can't remember the guy's name. It's like multi-billionaire. I was just saying, he bought all his employees these DVD collection. And I'm sure they weren't cheap, right? But I was like, the guy's a multi-billionaire. He should have got you guys all Ferraris. I mean, even Oprah sprung for cars for her audience. So, I'm just saying, if you guys are a billionaire, go for the big guns, But I mean, that was a nice present, I gotta admit. But
Yeah, but how many cars did Oprah have to buy? Did she actually buy cars for her audience?
no, I'm sure they worked out some kind of deal. But I was just saying, not only did Bert Poole, I mean, he's kind of a big wig, but do you guys know Apologia? He's a big wig too. I mean, he worked directly with George Lucas. I mean, he actually was the web operator for Lucas Online.
Yeah.
He's no joke in the Star Wars community, right? So, Katzenberg.
There are no jokes in the Star Wars community.
So Bert wants to know what Hogtie was saying. I guess the feed got interrupted and kind of dropped Hogtie out.
Oh. You'd have to ask Hogtie.
I think Hogtie is not paying
don't
attention.
remember.
Heavy is still getting feedback. But anyways, hey Bert, by the way, I'm going to be probably having a hangout in the next week or so. And my guest is going to be Alex Malpass. So I kind of like to have you there if you want. I'm kind of talking into him. He's also going to be doing another hangout with a few other people. I'm not going to say whom because you may not want it to know, but I thought it'd be kind of a cool hangout to have a philosophy hangout because he had asked me why we don't do more philosophy hangouts, and I'm like, well, because most people aren't interested in philosophy. And I don't know.
No, hold on, Steve. Hold on, Steve. Ask that question again.
Well, he asked me more specifically. He asked me if I'm ever going to have on philosophers as guests, and I'm like, well, I really don't know any philosophers. I know a friend of mine who has a PhD in philosophy, and you guys have met him before. But other than that, I don't really know anybody, even who I would begin to say, hey, do you want to come on as a guest?
So the question is, why does Steve not have more philosophy hangouts?
Yeah, or
How do you know that?
Yeah, how do you know that? Oh, Wayne did that. Oh my God, Wayne Fillmore did that to Cy 10 the other day.
Yes, I saw that.
You saw that? That was funny as shit.
How do you know that?
Yeah, Cy 10 left a message somewhere, and Wayne says, "How do you know that?" He's like, "Well, I wasn't making a claim," and I'm like, that was funny. Good going, Wayne. That was awesome. He didn't even catch it, did he? Yeah, I know Bert, and yeah.
Steve, we are live.
Yeah, we're live.
Oh, I thought you had. Never mind.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because there's an 8-hour time difference, and it's like at 2-3 o'clock in the morning my time, I'll get like an instant message, and 9 times out of 10 is from Alex Malpass. And it's, I don't know, we just had some weird conversations in the middle of the night, like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning my time, which is like midday his. But he is such a smart guy. I mean, just one of the nicest guys too. Very patient, right? I mean, he doesn't treat you like an idiot. He'll be like, oh, okay, let me explain this kind of thing, and he does so very, very well. But anyways, guys, I am going to end this hangout. I'm really tired. I've been up a very, very long time. I just want to get something out today because I had a hangout since Schweitzer's. But if you guys can think of like some suggestions for philosophers, I will reach out to them. It's just that I really don't even know what to be on, you know, existential nihilism or something. Do we really
Daniel Dennett?
Daniel Dennett would be cool. You know.
Rawr. He looked great in leather.
Yeah. All right, guys. I'm going to bid you guys adieu. Thank you for watching as usual. And good night.
So long.